another chat. So this is to cover North America, since I did have a live stream yesterday. Lukey's here. G'day, Lukey, and a few others that are watching. G'day, Tracy. Still waiting for things to pop in my restream, so taking a bit of a while. Go, Deborah. That's how crazy. It's not on. Yes, hello, Tracy. You just missed the actual, what restream's a bit like. It just didn't pick it up. Yes, exactly. It's very much so. So let's see what sort of crowd we get today. It's going to be interesting. Being a Monday in Australasia and in North America being a Sunday. And Joe's here. He must be having an enjoyable Sunday night. G'day, Joe. Good to see you, mate. No, I don't know anything about it. What is it? Is it some new supplement, is it? Or some sort of thing? Haven't heard of it. What is it? Okay, for agricultural labelling and stuff like that. No, when it comes to agricultural labelling and stuff like that, my sort of research is more into the N15 data, N14 data. It's more archaeological. I don't specialise in, well, I've looked after animals and done things like that in that regard. But when it comes to modern day agricultural coding systems, and because they use now, sort of RIF type tags and all sorts of things, and it's the standards. Yeah, you have to be in the industry to really know what the standards are nowadays and stuff like that, or being sort of an agronomist or somebody that's in that sort of field. But yes, definitely don't. I wouldn't call myself any specialist or anything like that in that field. Fair enough. Coming and going. Sounds good. Jared's in the house. G'day, mate. Yes, happy Monday for me and happy Sunday for you in North America. A more reasonable time for me. Okay, yeah. Look at General Jane. I would say it probably is for certain people. Not very convenient for me. It's on a Monday, but I'm on a holiday, so it doesn't really matter for me. But yes, if I was at work, it wouldn't be happening. It was just because yesterday I was sort of shopping in the morning, and then in the afternoon I was around at my brother's partner's place. So sort of having a meal and talking shit and stuff like that. So yeah, it wasn't practically possible yesterday. So I did the Eurasian one on the Saturday night when I got back from Salamanca Market, and the one that I usually do on Sunday mornings, Australian Eastern Standard Time, daylight savings, and it's usually in the night or the evenings in North America or the Americas. Yes. I just heard about I just heard about it again, but it's from my back. Okay. Oh, in regards to the other stuff, yeah, I'm with you. Yes. Hello, everyone. Yes. Used to be a comedy that was called that. With the French Resistance. Spencer, good to see you, mate. God, must be late where you are. look into it more, but I think it's about everything to do with food and nutrition. It has to do with sort of labeling standards and stuff like that, and the industry, stuff like that. I've heard about it, but I don't really know much about it. I can't, you know, the general stuff that everyone else knows, like certain numbers and stuff like that. I can look at a package and know that, probably give this a miss or whatever. But it's a whole nomenclature. Just for people to understand, nomenclature means a naming convention for that industry. So, unless you're actually heavily involved in the industry, to know all these labels and all the actual numbers off by heart, and their nomenclature, their specific nomenclature, yeah, you know, I mean, most of us were into real foods, not into processed foods. So even a lot of those, the majority of those labels are related to that sort of food. Um, some of us would not classify it as food or nutrition, but anyway, that's a different kettle of fish altogether in that regard. Um, no, we don't talk about digital currency on this channel at all. We stick to nutrition. Do not provide any, advice on financial stuff. Now, I may dabble in the stock market for my own personal gain and in certain things, but I don't actually at all, because you have to be a professional in the field to advise, and you can be sued. So I'm not interested in actually even discussing the issue. This is clearly nutritional side, so I'll keep my issues. Now, if you come to a Zoom session, that's a different thing. Come to a Zoom session, which is just private conversation and all that. When I do run them, I'm going to run one next week, next weekend. Then anything goes. You can ask me about digital currency or anything in that regard, any financial stuff, or even financial theory, or what I think the future is going to look like and stuff like that. Yes, but there's that sort of stuff about advice. It's I can give you opinions, but probably not the best forum for that sort of stuff. Yes, hello, Barbados as well. Everybody's on the French theme. What is it today? Am I missing something? Maybe I am. I don't have brie with me. It's in the fridge. That must be it. It must be the French connection. Anyway, it was interesting with Bart and Phil, and talking about with little Dan, that basically is fresh out of academia and thinks he knows everything. Yes, well indoctrinated, you know, and great to see the future scientists of the world with such an absolutist moral sort of agenda to science, or pseudoscience to be more precise. Because if that's the sort of crop of people that we're actually producing, that have got no critical thinking of their own, God help us. God bloody help us. That's going to happen this week. Yeah, I've been a bit slack. I've been on holidays. Wanted to take a bit of time off myself. So yes, I've been a bit slacky on that part. A couple of videos that I promised and I haven't done yet. So yes, I've been very slack. They do take time to produce these things. People need to understand, and yes, I probably could have done a bit more. But anyway, shit happens. Oops. Did I click? Yep, I did. Do you not see that if you kill him with a pill from the till, making with the drugs in the jar, then you're not the light, the candle, and the handle of the chateau, ghetto from the chateau. Yeah. You trying to tongue twist me, aren't you, Tracy? You know that I've got a difficulty with tongue twisting words, so you're having a go at me. Oh, nice. You know who your friends are. Not many, not many around. How dare you? Exactly. How dare you, Tracy? Yeah, I did have a nice break. Joe, sort of sometimes you need to just chill out with family and friends, do things and stuff like that. It can't be all social media and it can't be all work. Uh, and especially in this time, it's been quite stressful with especially all the madness at work. And I've put over 25 years of service in my work environment, and I don't know what my future job security is going to be like. It's yeah. So it is a bit on the stressful side on that front. I'm just trying to ignore it as much as possible and put it out of my mind. Um, yeah, so not happy about the situation. G'day, Henry. Howdy, Harry. Selenium supplements can help my vitamin C intolerance. I'm running out of ways to improve. You don't have to just eat normal food, mate. There's plenty of selenium in eggs and stuff like that, and in seafood. Um, yeah, and if you're on a carnivore diet, you do not need basically vitamin C's. Sort of, you get more than enough from the animal foods. You basically don't need to supplement at all. Please don't, because you'll just produce a lot of oxalate, and that excess oxalate will deplete your sulfur, like taurine. Not a good thing. So we don't want to be doing that sort of stuff. Just eat real food and enjoy the sun and enjoy life. It's not all supplements and stuff like that. Supplements are there specifically to help ameliorate deficiencies. They're there to basically help support certain people that have got certain levels of pathology. If you've basically got a lot of fibrosis, you may need more taurine. If you've got certain things like, pretty damaged liver, you may need R-alpha lipoic acid as a master electron donor. But if you take R-alpha lipoic acid when you're very healthy, in that regard, like any high antioxidants, it can actually affect ROS signaling. Some stress is important for the body because it actually helps it, become stronger, heal, do things. So it's a balance. You don't want a massive amount of antioxidants, are very damaging to your body. Very little and very high reactive oxygen species and inflammation is very bad for your body. Your body needs to sort of have this, and usually that homeostatic sort of balance comes with real food. We use supplements to supplement deficiencies or deal with certain things. The only thing, because it's not a micronutrient, it's an amino acid, is basically taurine, because it does decline with age. Now, obviously, in tribal societies, they would have got enough taurine in the diet. They would have had less mitochondrial damage. And so when they got into old age, they would still be synthesizing sufficient. Our decline happens because we've got far too much senescence, far too many damaged cells, and our body has to triage and say, well, it's more important to keep the brain, the heart, these things going than the sort of repair tissue. And so it down regulates the synthesis of certain things, or it is. So a nutrient dense diet, which comes from an animal based diet, actually covers a lot of that sort of stuff, which is really important. That's why it can actually slow down the decline, so to speak. But at the same time, it's really important. If you've seen my Physotin one to get rid of the senolytics, use senolytics to get rid of senescent cells, really important. So it's all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I've heard of NAC. There are certain cases you can that can be used, but most people do not need to basically supplement. And if you take a lot of, you go back and look at my video that I did on the methylate, on the homocysteine, criticizing Gregor. If you do that homocysteine, Harry, the body actually can produce its own cysteine and actually increase it under methionine, even infusion. So you really don't need to bother, Joe, in that regard. There may be certain cases, and it's a case by case. As I said, there may be certain reasons why people need to supplement certain things for a certain period of time to fix certain things or to rebalance certain things, and that's about it. It's not like let's supplement forever, like some people have this tendency, because it's a good money maker for certain influencers. There's don't interrupt, Harry. I was just watching one of your Omega videos and now your stream. Okay. Thanks, mate. Uh, yes, yes. The Frenchy quote. Do you think animal foods have a direct correlation in stature? Yes. Uh, don't all strongmen come from Iceland or somewhere in the regions that have extremely high animal intake? Yep. Yeah, it does. Obviously, genetic drift can actually happen also. So over time, if let's say somebody's an agriculturalist for a very long time, just because you start eating a whole lot of, you know, animal foods, it doesn't mean you're gonna, or your child does. It doesn't mean it's going to become really big. It will probably become bigger than its potential that it would have otherwise, but it may take a number of generations to shift and actually get the height and all that back. So usually takes about 3 generations to lose certain things, go bald, um, lose height, and a number of other things, and then it can take up to 3 generations the other way. So, it's just the way it is with genetics. It takes time to turn on genes or silence them in one direction or another. So, yes. But multiple generations of people like the Maasai, that are very tall in that regard, they tend to, yes. Now, the Inuit are not as tall, and people say, well, they eat shitloads. The problem is the certain foods that they're eating, the marine foods, tend to be lower in leucine. So leucine is the key driver of muscle protein synthesis, and also as a signaling, plays an important signaling role in sort of tissue growth and stuff like that. So in that regard, that's the sort of difference between the people. That's why you see the Maasai, you see the North American Plain Indians and all that had primarily ruminant. Their diet came primarily from ruminant animals, not from sea lions or other things like that have got lower leucine levels. Those as a consequence, you know people in that environment will tend to be taller. Those who have got less leucine, and even though it's animal dense foods like the Inuit consume, they will basically not have the same sort of anabolic signals to basically grow as big and tall. So all these things play a role, So where the sort of people like a lot of people don't realise, even people in Iceland, a lot of them, they may have some coastal food, but a lot of the food also comes from, um, you know, mammals and stuff like that. They hunted whales. The Inuit did not. They hunted seals and stuff like that. So they just or they dug holes in the ice to get to fish, as an example. But it was really hard to get. The environments were too severe to basically get off the ice and try and go out and actually do any. There's a few areas where there was a limited whaling further south from the Arctic in certain areas, but it was seasonal and very little. Where Icelandic people are further south from that sort of region and tend to have open to the south. There is pretty much the Atlantic is open in that regard, and so they were able to get more access. But also they had sheep, a lot of sheep in the centre, and a lot of those people consume a lot of ruminant animals, and they also eat certain grasses which are really tend to give the sheep both high omega 3s and also high vitamin D levels as well. So both those things. So very interesting, sort of how the environment can actually give certain animals certain types of micronutrient profiles. So there's a lot of factors in that regard. So, and vitamin D plays a big role also in bone growth and stuff like that, where the Inuit had slightly less. So that's another factor. There's a lot of factors like that. So you've got to really dig down into the factors to work out those sort of little nuanced differences. Um, yeah, some people seem to think it does in that regard. I've never really seen a good study. There's a lot of what I call anecdotal or epidemiological stuff. Um, but there's not like a lot of people say, well, if you drink too much water, it will dilute your stomach acid. Actually, water is used to produce certain stomach acid, and the lower sphincter can remove excess. So it doesn't. That's not really um, has a real big role. That's another one of those myths. You know, it's really the amount of taurine and chloride and stuff like that that you have in the system to basically regulate those pumps. Well, taurine's the regulator, which is in animal food. So if you don't get enough taurine in your diet by eating animal foods, those pumps are not going to be as well regulated. So actually, by fiber, they can even be suppressed. But that's another thing for another video. Yeah, it's one of those we don't really know. It's just basically there's a lot of people that make assumptions and make comments on this as if they do know, but really, no, we don't really have any really strong mechanistic science in that regard because there's no money in it. Nobody's ever looked at it. Simple as that. It's all anecdotes. Let me. Good to see you here. Yes. Nothing like she sells seashells by the sea shore. Yeah, you're trying to. Yeah, you're such nice people, aren't you? Trying to tongue twist me all the way. God. Dan Parlis, good to see you, mate. I'd love to hear more about taurine studies on diabetes. Yep, next month. Sorry, yeah, I'll be doing that. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize the importance of animal foods. You know, I talk about these important nutrients in animal foods, the massive benefit that they have. Even methionine. I still talk about methionine, occasionally, which is an important amino acid, sulfur amino acid in animal foods again that's been demonized. And the importance, if you go and look at the homocysteine stuff, the higher the methionine, the less homocysteine, not the other way around that we've been told by the crackpots. Real, actual science. People can go and look at that video and type Harry Serpanos homocysteine, and they will find the one where I really have fun with Dr. Gregor. That is funny, that one. I actually sometimes watch part of it just to get a few giggles, how these vagoons are so ridiculously in their ridiculous statements that they make. Where am I going? I'm going the wrong way. It's the one thing that I dislike about Restream. It doesn't actually, it you go over the things and it'll actually put like the box, but then there's a box that just sits on its own and it's just annoying to work out, where am I? So it's got a few cumbersome things that they need to basically make that a lighter transparent. May have to send them a message. Yes, one of those things. Sounds good. Keep at it. If woodchucks would go away, about us. I'm not even going to answer that. Somebody spank him. The video talks about Carnivore tribes, and this guy says that they are living longer on a healthy and tribals 80%. Yeah, 80% carbs plus meat, saturated fats. They eat fruits and starch. Is it true? Yes, but at the same time, it's very fibrous. They tend to consume their saturated fats are coming from coconut oil. So they consume. There are some it's the Tuvalu as well. They actually were consuming like 52% of their intake was coming from pretty much from coconut, primarily from coconut. Yeah, it was from coconut oil, and I think it's coconut oil and the meat part as well, both. So yeah, that was primarily, but at the same time, a lot of that is very high in certain medium chain triglycerides and short chain fatty acids. There's a few, I think, or no, I'm probably wrong on that one, but they will convert to ketone bodies. Then you've basically got a whole lot of saturated fats that actually will induce reverse electron transport that will actually biosynthesize more and actually more mitochondria, which can manage that side of things. And then the other thing is these people these sort of carbohydrates were not basically, the type of carbohydrates we're talking about. Um, these people were tending to basically eat stuff that was very fibrous. If you take a look at and they also underate. So they weren't engaging the Randall cycle because they underate these populations. Now, if you go and see the populations, because they overeat, they get too much energy in, and they're more sedentary and all that, they are very obese and very unhealthy. So the ones that have moved to the cities and stuff like that. But the ones that were undernourished and all that were basically didn't have those health markers, and they were physically active, so they were depleting the glycogen anyway. As I've said in the past, as our food supply dropped in the interglacial period and the fattiness of the animals dropped, humans were forced into tubers and other sources of energy in the tribal areas, and that's when the N14 data started going up in the last 20,000 years. It's not accidental. It's because they had no option. And the interglacial period was getting warmer. The animals were getting leaner. So you had to get energy from somewhere, especially in an environment where you don't have a supermarket around or anything like that. You need to access every single source of energy. And these were people, generally speaking, undernourished. That's why they weren't engaging the Randall cycle. That's why it wasn't an issue. Now that they are engaging the Randall cycle, it is an issue. So they're very unhealthy in comparison. And the other thing that's very important to say is there were never recorded any longevity people. So there were never a case where the Maasai, who are running a low ketotic state, there are many centenarians amongst them. And a number of the other tribal, amongst the Inuit, there were centenarians. But we never found amongst the Kitavan any centenarians. So they don't live long lives. So it's, it allows them to breed and keep healthy enough to breed over a number of generations, but they don't live long lives, and they're not very tall either. So there's a whole lot of things, in that they don't tell you. They just tell you, oh, they're healthy, and they were eating this amount. Yes, but they were undernourished. They weren't eating as much, and they were not engaging the Randall cycle, something that many of these academics don't still understand, even though Philip Randall, published it back in 1963. How long does it take for people to basically start understanding things? But when you're not interested in learning other things, you don't. Unfortunately, it's the reality. But no, as I always point to these, people show me a study that actually shows Kitavans as centenarians, and they look at you. No, because they don't exist. And we know that when you look at longevity populations, they tend to be more low carb, and they tend to basically eat more animal foods. Traditional longevity people. So yeah, it's more bullshit, different day. Unfortunately, I thought being self-employed would protect me. However, I have a client who have been brainwashed. Go elsewhere because I refuse to submit to the experiment. Yes, 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 you're a bad woman. That's why. Just be honest. Yes, bloody unfortunate. The reality is job front. No fear. Yeah. Yeah. When you're throwing your whole life away, it's not easy, Jared. I can tell you. A lifetime pension, everything like that. Who's going to give me that back? No one. So, yes, it's if it was that easy. It's easy for people that don't have a lot to lose to be able to jump up and down, but when you've got a lot to lose, it's not bloody easy. Um, uh, there once was a man from Nantucket. See, I did say that. Go and spank yourself 3 times. You misinterpreted my comment. Oh, did I? Which comment? I probably did. Started Carnivore 2018. Yes, you've been doing it for a while. Oh, okay. You're being facetious. A selenium supplement has helped my vitamin C intolerance. Okay, comical. Okay, gotcha. I've got it. Yes, must be early in the day. I'm still not. My brain's still not going. Yes, must be that. Yep, I sort of covered that. Oh, look, it can help. It seems to have associations that actually, but a lot of this sort of stuff. If you eat a high methionine diet, you'll get it. Your body will produce it, so you don't need to supplement. If you're on sad diet, a sad dieter who's not eating a species appropriate diet, yeah, probably could be quite helpful for people like that. So would taurine supplementation, would be helpful for somebody who's not eating, who's eating a fast food diet primarily. Yeah. But people that are eating species appropriate, no, wouldn't be an issue whatsoever in that regard. Chris Mussolini has some body on talking about niacin and curcumin for, yes, that thing, the C19. Niacin, yes, I would agree. Curcumin seems to have some effect, but it's associational, where niacin is actually associated with energy production and certain. Um, so it's really important. So if you've got good energy production, you can actually heal better in that regard. So yes, but you can just eat, you know, tuna, and you could eat pork to basically get high dose and certain other sources of animal food that are very good sources of niacin. So you don't need to necessarily supplement, and if unless there are specific reasons where you want to help your mitochondria. I do a small low dose. I don't only recommend a low dose, not a high dose. So 100, if you're doing 100 is probably okay. If you're doing like a gram or something like that, that a lot of people are doing, like 1,000 milligrams, probably not a good thing. It does interfere with a whole lot of other processes in your body, including gluconeogenesis, lipolysis, and a few other things. So not indicated to basically be doing those high levels. Does have some negative effects. So, but unfortunately, people say more is better. No, it's not. So, and remember, the most important thing is your first line of defense. If people have not seen Barbados, my video on T cells, just type in T cells, Harry Serpanos, all about how to basically improve your T cell first line of defense. Most important. Also gives you the longest immunity. Lifetime immunity comes from T cells, does not come, from people who are ignorant about antibodies and stuff like that. Weak immune systems do not give you the same protection. So eat a species appropriate diet, get out in the sun, and you'll have a much stronger immune system. That's far more important than, just supplements that people talk about. As I said, sun, salt, and meat. Get it right, and you'll be much healthier for it. Robbie, good to see you, mate. Mr. Beebies, always a pleasure. Yes, yes. Did you give her a hard time after we spoke on the phone last time? Yes. She was giving me a hard time. God almighty. Oh, there she is. Actually making an intelligent statement. Good girl. Ah, yes, nothing like doing that. Thanks, Loki. Yes, definitely thumbs up. And I'm just going to cycle quickly through. Unless you have some specific use. You know it's required. Yes, exactly. As Jared says, yes, you've got to have reasons. I mean, the Inuit, the Maasai, all these populations, the San people of the Kalahari, they're not supplementing. They don't have a supplement store. But we've damaged ourselves quite a bit over time. And so, yes, there are sometimes requirements for certain things, but we've got to be careful not to go too far because we can create imbalances in our bodies, all sorts of things. So, you know, I would rather have people eating more meat than basically supplementing. It may take longer for certain people to correct certain things, but it's probably safer in many regards. Yeah, can you talk about? Yes, Northern Europeans do tend to have salicylate intolerances. What are salicylate foods? Well, coconut. So I always find it amusing how so many Northern Europeans are consuming coconut oils, coconut products, you know, and they tend to have a much more. It's a hot. The prevalence of of salicylate is much higher, and in parts of like the Mediterranean where salicylate tolerance is much higher. Um, so you know it's the complete opposite. It's funny. I find it always amusing that people and I actually have people have told me certain symptoms, and then I'm getting these rashes on my skin and all that and whatever, all sorts of different things, and then they you know, at some point they say, "Oh, I'm eating these bars, these low carb bars occasionally as a snack, a protein bar. Oh, they're okay. They don't really have anything." And I go, "Do they have coconut oil in them?" They go, "Oh, yeah." And they usually, when they give those up, it all goes away. So yeah, there is a bit of an issue with salicylate intolerance, and the further north you go, the worse it gets. So if you go into like Iceland, the Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Norway, and those sort of places, it actually gets worse in terms of intolerance to salicylates. The further south you come, the less it is, and around the tropics, it's non-existent. So yeah, so there is a lot of salicylate intolerance that people sort of think is something else until they remove these things from their pantry and lifestyle, and then they realize, oh, it was only that. And they usually don't know what it is, most people, but most people don't. And usually they'll get rid of the bar or something like that. They may not consume it for some time, and then they don't feel those symptoms, but they don't know what the compound is in that regard. So you will find salicylates in a number of, even in some of the nightshades and stuff like that. There's a bit also in olives as well. So you'll find very small traces in olive oil as well. So it is around in a number of different foods. So yeah, it's best to avoid those things. And if you're on a carnivore diet, you tend to do that, so it's not a non-issue. Um, and I have no idea about Central Europe, and I know you're in Central Europe, Spencer, or around, or have descendants from that sort of part, probably, or I'm not sure. I think you've got descendants. I think something like along that line. So you may have a salicylate issue. You may not. I don't know. Um, a lot of people have moved to other parts of the world. They've sort of intermixed some. So it's hard to say. I've actually found people that have one parent that comes from a region like Northern Europe and all that, and they just were unlucky to get even though they look more like the other parent, their facial features and all that, and you'd think, you shouldn't have a problem whatsoever, but their dad or granddad or whatever was from a different region, and they just got that gene that came down, and so they never got the sort of the adaptation passed on. So yeah, so it's one of those things. Certain people end up having more sensitivity than others. There are some tests that you can actually go and do with naturopaths. They do have a salicylate sensitivity thing. And somebody did mention there's an online company that actually produces a thing that you can actually put on your skin to see whether you've got sensitivity. But I haven't looked into it. I probably should find out what the product is. But yeah, you probably can do a home test. I did get my vitamin D home tests come through, and I realised that it's not as accurate as I thought. They only look at bands, whether you're deficient, this and that, and whatever. So I won't do the actual test because I realise you have to do a test and actually push a lot of blood out and all that and collect it, and it'll be too messy here to do. Plus, I don't want certain people passing out either. So we'll leave it at that in that regard. So, it's the last thing I want. G'day, Bart. Good to see you, mate. Oh, me just having fun. I didn't do the live stream yesterday, so I decided to do a Monday one for North America, and I did a Saturday one for the Eurasian sort of the other group of people. I enjoyed this morning's sort of little run through with that little turd Dan. Yeah, you boys, you and Phil did a very good job. So yes, these little brainwashed kids that are coming out of academia nowadays and just basically absolute, just dribble. They've got they're not engaged. They can't even engage their brain cell. Oh, he said, "Oh, okay. I'm a bigot. I'm a really bad person." Okay. Can you send Ted over to give me a good spanking? He needs to give all of us a spanking. Or we can actually blame, I know even better one, Bart. Let's just blame Ted. He's the one that's actually, led us down that sort of wrong path, apparently. uh, Harry's bloodbath live. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would be with this test. It probably would. There's a whole lot like a syringe type thing that I actually have to pull a lot of. I didn't realize it was. It wasn't. It's not as. Yeah. Anyway, it's a bit more involved, but it sort of gives you a general sort of where you are and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of result I get. But I realise that I can't do a comparison. I did find a new product that it's a similar thing, but they put it in a special tray, and then you put the two parts, the blood and the other part, the reactant. But then once it actually reacts, you leave it for a couple of minutes, and then you put this device, which then analyzes it, and it will tell you exactly how many nanograms. It's in nanograms. So when you want to get millimoles, so it's in nanograms per milliliter. So if you want to get the one that's used in Europe, Australasia, and stuff like that, which is millimoles, you have to times it by 2.5, and then you get millimoles per liter. So that's the way that sort of works. Yeah, so it's a bit more involved than I thought. The other one's very similar, but they use a different tray method and all that. So it's a bit, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to get the other one as well. It's a bit more expensive, but give it a try. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this on my dad. So it'll be interesting how he's going to respond to that. He may actually just tell me to fuck off. There's a possibility. Dad can be a bit like that. Um, enough experimentation. Go away, I'm fine. You just say something like that, But that's his style. Good morning to you as well, Raymond. Good to see you, mate. Kenya's newest product of 48 hour Dirty Harry fast. uh, uh, how many grams per kilogram body mass? What dose frequently? Look, for the average person, I would say 6. If you're doing a dirty, based on that sort of research, it's about, I think it's not exactly 6. I think it comes out to about, for the average sized person, height, about around 5 grams of leucine, approximately. It's a while since I did that video on leucine being the driver of muscle protein synthesis and not insulin, so you don't need carbs. But that's the dirty fasting, that where you can actually put in leucine, just leucine, and actually get muscle protein synthesis in a fasted state, which is a bit of a biohack to basically get the 24 hours of sort of autophagy, or some limited autophagy, because it's always happening when you're not eating, but also to basically have this extra, as your body's clearing out a lot of the the cells out of gunk and proteins and fats, and actually then use that to basically drive new cellular production to be used in tissues and replacing things. So yeah, it's a sort of like a dirty hack in that regard. It's about that. Look, you're not going to go wrong with 6 grams in that regard, unless you're quite big. I may, if you're a really large sized, I'd probably say, Raymond, consider something like 8. If you're quite short, small in stature and all that, probably around about 4. But for most people, around about 6 would be the sort of average, approximately. So you need to be over 3, 2.6 to be more precise, if we're going to be completely scientific about it. But at 3, you'll get some level of muscle protein synthesis in a fasted state. But at 6, you'll definitely boost that up, and you'll get this big spike in terms of insulin signaling, which just will get the body ramped up with enzymes happening to drive that in there. I would also take a B vitamin supplement. Now, they didn't do that in the study, but remember, B vitamins are important cofactors for a lot of enzymatic processes. So I'd actually help that along with taking a B vitamin complex when I'm doing something like that. So it's a combination of the two. That's my protocol, not the study one. But I think that usually, because it was a very short term, we're talking about very short term. B vitamins tend to be in your system for a couple of days, and so it probably wasn't as important. I just like to ramp it up a bit in that regard, and I take them at the same time. So I put them in a glass of water. So I usually the Evian water, which is lower in deuterium by 9 parts per million. I'll use that, and it's also got minerals. It's quite mineral dense, that water. I use it for my coffee, so I've got my coffee here, and it's with that. So it's got a lot of trace minerals, which is fantastic in that regard. Being alpine water, and so I'll combine that stuff in there. I usually also put taurine in as well, and for my heart reasons, I always put L-citrulline for more nitric oxide through arginine being converted in the bloodstream, and then I'll mix it all up and just drink that. That's usually what I'll do as what I call my dirty fast. So give it a try. So I did actually notice, so, and even with Dad now, I'm sort of experimenting. The old boy's willing to experiment a bit with leucine, so his muscle at 87, his muscle tone is actually, we've noticed now for the last couple of weeks, much better. So he's even noticed it as well. So he's happy with the result. So he's, because I know he sort of vacillates between having big animal meal days and other days that he drops off a bit. He's not as consistent always. Sometimes he is, but not always. And so at least he does his yogurt at night and throws in some leucine and taurine and stuff like that. So, which is really good because it actually has improved his sleep as well because of, it increases GABA, taurine. So he's sleeping really well now in the evenings, which is good. So he's getting up way more refreshed. So the old boy's actually doing much better. He can't believe it. He's so happy. He's pretty much open to anything, I could put, well, maybe not put him in a cage and do experiments on him. He wouldn't go that far, but he's open to a lot of suggestions, let's put it that way, than what he was in the beginning when he used to give me some filthy looks and goes, "What are you trying to put into me? Is this safe?" Oh, yeah, I used to get all those sort of comments in the old days. So yes, and I can sympathise. Ah, hey, Bart, I was going to send you a link, so you've taken off. So food is more important to you, is that it, Bart? Now it is. Now that he's priming like mad. uh, yes. He's a Hoover carnivore. You know what a Hoover is? That sucks everything? He's a Hoover carnivore now, old Bart. Uh, he's struggling. But, it's good that he's giving it a go. I mean, I did a couple of days, like really high, eating a lot of meat, and I really struggled, I can tell you. I really struggled, especially when you're not used to it. It's a struggle, but yeah, he is Raymond, yeah. So I'm glad that Bart's doing this experiment, which is really good. So he's going to show the value of meat, of animal foods, you know, the importance of it, and how you can, and all the and also our ancestors, this sort of switch between feasting feasting and fasting that our ancestors did. And there are tribal people. There's one tribal people, as I was talking in the Amazon, they will eat like all day. They just eat, 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 and then fast for 2 days. They don't, every third day they eat. They just will eat, eat all day long. They'll just absolute binge themselves out, until they can't get any more down. And then they just fast for 2 days. So really interesting. The sort of differences in traditions and things that different populations have around the world and do things. And, that's when I hear certain people, "Oh, you can't do that," or "That won't work," or whatever. I'm going, have you given it a try? You know, all these, "Oh, 3 meals a day, eat your eat your kibble." I mean, they've grown up with brainwashed ideas, and that's why they think like that. Anyway, what's Nick saying? YouTube's still at it, I see. Not been on a live show for months, and still when sitting to tell me it doesn't do it. Yeah, I know. Look, YouTube is a bit like, it's the great censor. It's the great reset. It's part of the great reset. Haven't you worked that out? Google is part of that. And, since YouTube is owned by them, yeah, exactly. So we're tolerated, people like me and Bart and Phil, and people like that. We're not part of the acolytes, the inner circle of the YouTubia world. Yes. We're not their real good, true, you know, brainwashed influences. Yes. We actually engage our mind and think about things and question things. God, how awful is that, to question things in life? Absolutely awful. Can't do that. Fat adaptation time coming from a mixed macro diet. It can vary. It can vary due to genetics. It can vary due to the damage that somebody's actually had. It can vary. Better let Robbie pop in. It can vary for a whole lot of reasons. So it's not one fits everything. Some people can take, you know, I've had people that have, have struggled, but they have come from cancer and stuff like that, and they had a lot of mitochondrial damage, and a lot of them have very difficulty getting into ketosis or even um, good levels of fat oxidation. So they can take a very long time, and they have to do senolytics and all sorts of things, and reverse electron transport sort of things with the stearic acid supplementation, and things like products like Cerul, stuff like that, that actually enhances stem cells, or fasting or exercise, and all sorts of things that do the same thing but a lesser amount. So you've got a whole myriad of people, but most, let's say, an average person that is not really damaged and all that, should be able to get fat adapted within about 3 months. Especially if they're younger. So, but generally speaking, it can take quite longer. So, you know, that's you, yeah, play it by ear, and see how you go, and don't spend too much on testing stuff. Um, and if you're going to test like a couple of days at the beginning of a month and see how you're going to gauge, rather than constantly, because you'll waste a lot of money and you'll drive yourself mad as well. You got to be patient with things. You damaged your body, it takes time to fix things. So you got to be patient. Patience is a virtue. Do you know what the difference between um, taurine and human taurine? Taurine is taurine is taurine. What the requirements are? Well, when it comes to cats, their requirements are very high. It's another reason why the cat goes in, like the cats, the lions, and all that. They go in for the organ meats where taurine is much higher, because they need that. So if you're basically got a little pussy, you basically need to feed it organ meats, because it will help it in that regard. Is very important. I would say comparing tribes to a normal person is pointless. Completely different lifestyle, and they will eat clean food. Exactly. And there are many other things. And as you said, completely different lifestyle. They move around a natural environment. They earth themselves all day. They're earthing themselves to the earth. So they're getting negative ions, basically, which is important for electron doning and stabilizing tissue. So for oxidation, they are basically in line with circadian rhythms. They don't have any blue light exposure, artificial blue light exposure, or non-native EMFs and magnetic, sort of photonic energy coming from that's going to be disruptive to their own circadian rhythms, and completely different. Their requirements of DHA are lower because they live in an environment which it's not being degraded like in our non-native blue light type environment that it is. Completely and utter different. It's the reason why you can have an 80-year-old Maasai that can run up a hillside, and Mary Ruddock, who considers herself a low-carb person, quite healthy by Western standards, can't keep up. And she's in her mid-40s. Tells you everything that you need to know about the difference. Yeah, exactly, Nick. Absolutely. Very different, And this is why, you hear Dan and people like this, these young fellows that have just wet behind the ears and basically know very little, and then sitting there lecturing people with life experiences like Phil, or, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. At least Phil basically, through experimentation, being open-minded, questioning, learning, seeing what works and what doesn't, what is closer to a species appropriate, and looking at good research that, people like me, Bart, and others are looking at, realizes this stuff works. If it works, and we go back, 50s and 60s, people were eating more animal foods, 2/3 to 70% compared to today because of lack of refrigeration. They were healthier. It doesn't take rocket science to work that out. Yeah, exactly. So it's just ridiculous. What can one say? Do you follow the tennis, Harry? No, I don't. Any bets on today's showdown? No. I was just going to say, Novak Djokovic. I mean, unfortunately, the poor fellow got done. Here's the guy that actually is younger, has got far better, results. Look, I've watched tennis. I don't follow it. I used to play soccer, and I used to follow soccer and football and a lot of other things in cricket, because even my cousin, he used to play sort of rugby and cricket in a sort of in a youth type stuff, and I used to play soccer years ago. But I've got maybe I've got more interesting things to do with life nowadays. It's become too commercial as well, and so a whole lot of prima donnas getting overpaid just to hit balls or push balls or run around with balls and all that. And there's, let's say, the commercial element is just off the show in that regard. And some of the other aspects, I don't enjoy it as much, So occasionally I may sit around with some friends and have a few drinks and a bit of a chat and watch something in the background, but it's not something that I go out of my way anymore to follow like I used to when I was a bit younger. So, yes, I'm a bit different nowadays. G'day, Scott. Good to see you, mate. Yes, we did. I didn't do a live stream yesterday, so it had to be today. Seems like you could do a video just on what you're saying now. Climate change 20 Ks ago, and our diet adaptation starts until. Yep, yeah. Well, it's something that I've actually. I actually got from one of the academic sites that I subscribe to. I got the isotope analysis for the Iranian or the Iranian plateau, and the differences as the groups of people moving through that had different N15 to N14, and how they shifted over time, which coincides with more agricultural sort of stuff. So yeah, it is really interesting. It was a series I was going to make years ago with Bart, but never got around doing it. And I've been doing a lot of the nutritional stuff and disease things and stuff like that currently. But I need to go back to doing some. I did some stuff with, because I do love archaeology, and have been aware now for, what is it now? I've known about the N15 data now for about 9 years, in that regard. So 11 years ago was when I had my health issues, but I've known about this stuff for some time now. But I did a couple of things. If you go and check out my chats with Bart, I did cover a few things like with the chimps and the savanna chimps and stuff like that and whatever. But I haven't really got into doing any videos that covers a lot of this sort of stuff. I talked about it, but I haven't really sat down to really do something. I did say that later this year I'll be doing a sort of a series on some of this sort of stuff. There's a bit of information that is on the ApoE one that I do talk a bit about these interglacial periods and the changes in the ApoE, in terms of those genetics, ApoE 4, 3, and 2, and why they came about. So I do cover that, and that's with Pim Johnson, that Johnson, that I actually did a video. So it's in my playlist with Pim, Chats with Pim. So you can find it there, that one. But yeah, I will be looking at doing something a bit more comprehensive along those lines to really go into that and how the food changed and how the isotopes changed and why the tribes today are forced to eat some of these contraindicated foods, but because in a natural environment, that's all that's a supplemental food because there's much leaner animals compared to what there was in the past, and that these are issues need to be explained why tribal people today are different, shorter, less stocky compared to Cro-Magnon man and further back, where they had 10% more brain capacity and they were bigger. So we lost that as a consequence of climate change back then. Yeah, the world is crazy. Yes, firstly, so many people overweight, and second, yes, they are having a close encounter with Jabba, our dear friend Jabba the Hutt. Yes, exactly. Yep, I think we've covered those people. Why are Mexicans much shorter on average compared to Europeans? The high rice bean diet. Yep, pretty much. Poor protein. It really comes back to protein, you know. And so, and remember, if you even go to Africa, parts of Africa, the people that are involved in agriculture, like maize and stuff like that, they're all short. Any group that's basically involved in hunting or pastoral sort of living, they're all tall. It's simple as that. And so obviously, for those changes to happen, there's only been a couple of generations and they're still not getting enough nutrients. Only very much in the 20th century that people are getting, like excess nutrients. But that's why there's been a very long time. You take a look at Europeans were much bigger, taller, especially the, Nordic, like Vikings and people like that. It wasn't accidental that they were great warriors. Well, they were bigger, larger, you know, so they were physically stronger. Simple as that, because they're eating a more species appropriate diet. It's the way that, like the Maasai, why they dominate their region. Nobody will take them on again because of the type of foods that they consume. Simple as that. It's not complicated. We actually see it as the N15 data goes down and the N14 isotope, which is called Delta 14 nitrogen isotope. So that they always use a delta. So, and even with the carbon one, it's delta 12 carbon, to tell you whether it's from a ruminant animal, because it depends on the type of grass that, what the animal's eating. So you know exactly what the source of the animal. So you know whether it's a fish or whether it's a ruminant animal, whatever, the N15, where it's coming from. So, yeah, getting back to what I was saying. Yeah, that plays a role. And it's over a number of generations where those genes become more pronounced. So and that's why it can take a number of generations to shift again. So, I mean, if Mexicans, were to be eating a more species appropriate diet for, let's say, a couple of hundred years from now, they would all become very, very tall. In Japan, remember when they introduced dairy, the heights jumped dramatically. Now there, you had a situation where the population may have been a bit on the shorter side, but also they hadn't lost all those sort of genetics completely. And so when they actually introduced more dairy and stuff like that had been banned in Japan, dramatic heights, so you had more branched chain amino acids coming in from the dairy product, and that really just ramped up their height. So it was quite interesting what happened in Japan as a consequences of some introduced foods that they used to have in their diet, and then they lost them. Well, they were banned because of one of their emperors decided it was a good idea or whatever. or was it the mix of Neanderthals and Denisovans? Denisovans actually and Neanderthals tended to not were a bit different. Now, Denisovans basically were um, not as stocky. They had a bit of stockiness, but not a lot of stockiness. The Neanderthals were much more stocky. That's true. And that's why, if you look at the Europeans, they are tall like the Maasai, but they are much more muscular. That is definitely Neanderthal. That's coming from there. That's true. I've mentioned it before in that regard. And that's why most strong men are basically people of European descent, and most, very big bodied people in weightlifting and stuff like that tend to come from a European background. They tend to compete. You take a look at wrestling, weightlifting, and stuff like that. It's primarily those sort of people. So, and that's sort of the sort of differences due to the Neanderthal. The Neanderthals were far more muscular in that regard. So, and I think their myostatin levels are very different compared to what Homo sapiens were. So it's the reason why they notice certain myostatin differences between Europeans and others. So they think that does come from the Neanderthals, that slight change. So, anyway, let's move on. Is it true that the state of Western Australia is putting folk in lodged facilities? Apparently, what I've heard, yes, they're really nice over there. They've locked themselves away from the rest of the country. They don't want anyone in. We're declaring an independent state, nearly. Yeah, somebody should quote them the Constitution of Australia that basically allows the free movement of things between borders. You can't actually have internal borders and shut off. This is not the Soviet Union where you actually had, it was illegal to move between borders unless, you're allowed. I mean, God, what can one say? That hasn't been said without getting me into trouble. Yes. Yes. Let's not nuance it. Just because you get a shorter prison sentence or a longer prison sentence, still a bloody prison sentence, especially in that state. Now, in case of people like there are some people over there. There are a few sand gropers over there. Like Blinky. I mean, we've actually sent requests to the Premier to lock him up permanently, but it still hasn't worked. He keeps escaping. You'll probably listen to this and give me a hard time after. Do you change your diet in the winter versus summer months? Let's say I avoid cheating in winter to a bare minimum, and probably I may tend to cheat a bit in the summer period because you got the Christmas period, so I'm going to drink. Where through winter I didn't drink at all. I only drank once, and that was when somebody retired. So I sort of you got to, So in that regard, in autumn there was another twice where there was somebody retiring, and then there was a work function. So yeah, it's pretty minimal. But in summer, there is a bit more. Like even last night, I had a couple of ciders, so 3 ciders. So it's just I'd have a tendency to, let's say, have a few cheats. In the summer period. Are they species appropriate? No. No tribal person's out there brewing beer and drinking or cider or whatever, or consuming any of that. No. But am I perfect? No. But I try to keep it to a bare minimum, some of this sort of stuff, because it comes back and bites you. And depending on how sick you are or how much you want to heal yourself, it can make a big difference. G'day, Clark. Good to see you, mate. Yes. We should never you can always watch this tomorrow or later. You should never neglect your sleep. Very important. Otherwise, you'll lose your superpowers. It's exactly when you've got to lose one, gets to feel how serious all this is or how hard it is impacted and would be motivated to speak up even more. But I'm not reproaching anyone. Yes. Yes, it is like a hard time for everyone. There's a lot of people with businesses, even people with business, not only working for somebody, but even people with businesses are being, you know, shunned in certain areas. If people are not basically mandating certain things, if you find a store where the owners of that store are not basically saying, well, they don't have a sign outside saying you must come in a certain way in the store, you know, you must be basically have a nappy on or basically be, let's say, double Jabba the Hutted or stuff like that. If because there are businesses around that are not subscribing to that and they're saying this is my private property, get off. You know, there was a Queensland guy and he said to the police officers, "This is my business. Get out of here. You can't enforce things in my own property." And they had to go, so they really couldn't do much about it. But you should go and support those people, keep them in business. That's the sort of people you want in business. I would say to people, I would be going every day. If I had somebody like that in my locality that was like that, I'd be going every day to make sure they do survive. So that's what you should be doing in that regard. But it's always it's going to be very difficult for a lot of us, and there's a lot of, especially from the lunatic brigade, the constant pointing and name calling. And even myself, I sometimes, I get the filthiest looks constantly, um, and still the last couple of days been because it's the Omicron is sort of getting its legs around in Hobart, and people basically just see me without a nappy on my face and literally cross the road. They literally avoid me like the plague. It's ridiculous. I can tell you one thing, it's very roomy. It's easy to walk around, you know? And all you have to do is to see if you really want to scare them and they run. Just do that, no run. They really give you a lot of space. It's just ridiculous where the world has got to. Somebody's sneezing and everybody has a panic attack. Oh, God. The world is gone mad. I thought, in our nature, we are carnivores. The guys in the videos call gurus for the following a low carb hope. You can watch it because he has science on that and he is biochemistry. Yes. A lot of these people, they think they know everything. Yes, it's a strange world where young people who are wet behind the ears, as I say, have just come out of academia and think they know everything. And apparently people like the Maasai, the Inuit and the Sand people of the Kalahari and all these people are completely ignorant. They've only been living like this for multiple generations, for hundreds of thousands of years, What do they know? And seem to be healthier than this person who basically just came out of academia and thinks he knows everything. It's ridiculous. That's the sort of, I don't need science to tell me what a species appropriate diet is. I look at the N15 data, I look at tribal populations, and I see that they do not have words for cancer, they do not have words for cardiovascular disease, they do not have words for diabetes, they don't have words in their own language for these diseases. We do, but they don't. And in many cases, when they do go to cities and eat inappropriately and end up with these diseases, they use our words to describe those illnesses. That's how ridiculous it is. And then you've got these little pompous little shits that have just come out of academia who think that they know best. When they live in an environment that has actually brainwashed them to believe certain things and has actually created the most toxic health environment in the history of humanity. The amount of people that are obese, sick, with illness is beyond the pale nowadays. And these people are telling us that a species appropriate diet is wrong. Are they insane? Are they so blind to the reality? Have they got their heads so up their rear ends that they can't see, daylight? It's ridiculous. But that's the reality we live in. That's why Bart got out of academia, because he was sick and tired of all the, the pretty much the bastardy and the bullying that was happening in that environment. If you engage your mind and start questioning things, you're a bad person. It sounds less like science and more like a religion, doesn't it? It sounds like a cult. The scientific cult, the modern day scientific cult. You disagree with us, we'll squash you. You're a bad, bad person. And that's pretty much what it's at. This is why people like me that believe in the scientific principle of analyzing reality are so basically angry with these people and critical of these people. It's not accidental. It's because it's beyond the pale. So it's crazy, to say the least. But what can one say? How far behind am I? I'm falling behind quite a bit, aren't I? Oops. Yes. Yes. Where am I now? Losing it. Move on. Yes. Yeah, it can take it as long as that. It can vary. But if you're relative, good for you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Neff. Exactly. Please hit that like button. I always forget to say that. Thanks for reminding me. Exactly. She's done well. Congratulations. Exactly. 4 years. Very well, Elizabeth. Yeah, it can take. Look, different people vary. How long it takes to adapt. So it took me, because I was really sick with a lot of health problems. It took me a couple of years before I could really get myself into ketosis. I struggled probably about. Let me just go back. 13. Probably about nearly 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. But I had a lot of mitochondrial damage. I mean, you guys look at me and you say, "Oh, Harry, you're 55? You don't look 50," or things like that people say. There's been 11 years of hard work to get back, and a lot of damage, and trying to get rid of all the senescent cells, all the damaged cells in my body. I used to be really, my face was really pasty and really, wrinkly and a lot of stuff on it. I was really sick back in my 40s. People don't realize how sick I was. It's taken me a long time. I mean, some people at work saying, "Are you getting younger, Harry, than older?" So I was a sick lad. I mean, you don't get cardiovascular disease at 44 if you're not very sick. I was using seed oils for everything because they told me that it was healthy for you. So I cooked everything in seed oils. You know, the only thing I didn't do is drink seed oil. That's how bad I was. I was like a poster boy for the seed oil industry. That's why I did a lot of damage to my mitochondria. You know, that's why basically I struggled to lose weight as well. You know, it took me nearly 3 years to be able to get myself to deep ketosis to lose 15 kilos in 6 months. And it actually was slightly more than that. A big pot belly I used to have. So it's much harder. I mean, I only, as I joke sometimes to people, I just have to look at a carb and I'll put 2 kilos on, and then it'll take me months to get it off. It's because I did a lot of damage to my mitochondria, my health. I'm trying to fix a lot of this sort of stuff, and it takes time. I'm patient. I realize that. I'm not impatient, and I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. I hope by the time I get to my, 60s and all that, that I'm so further ahead and I've cleared out more of the damage out of my body, more of the senescent cells and stuff like that, and I'm further ahead where I have to be if I'm trying to get to 100. So yeah, so it's a hard slog in that regard. And I actually, that's why young people that actually get on a carnivore diet, their body composition just goes like that overnight. They heal themselves and immediately, they become muscular like Leucine, and, their body's composition is fantastic. They're really healthy. They've got a lot of energy and strength and all that. They can't believe themselves. But for us oldies with a lot of damage, it takes a bit longer, So, and that's why you get these influencers and all that don't engage the Randall cycle like that. And they pop out, they go, oh, look me. I'm going, yeah, you're 20 or whatever with very little damage, obviously, but good luck to you. I don't begrudge these people, but there is a difference why it actually happens so quickly. People like us, that are older, they're more damaged. It's going to take longer. You've got to be patient. I mean, most of the younger people that, because I've got about a quarter which are in that younger bracket, and they're 20, then I've got about a quarter where we're in their sort of 30, 40, and then 50, 60, and then much older sort of crowd in that regard, the way my numbers are down. Because I'm weak. That's why, Spence. Any reason why you cheat? Because I'm weak, like any other human. That's why. I probably should know better, but I'm still weak. It's just normal human frailty. I mean, we live in a food environment that's very toxic. We're all susceptible to addiction. We're all susceptible to having, a bad day where we feel stressed and pissed off with the world, and then we do an inappropriate thing because he's a bad boy. You know me too well, Shelley. Yes, you know me far too well. I just shoulder throw something like that. Yeah, I probably am a bit of a bad boy sometimes with the ladies. You got to be. I think they enjoy a bit of that. Guessing what's going to come next. A bit of excitement. Remember, curry and stuff like that does actually bind iron. So there could be something with the iron metabolism with the C19. So yeah, look, it's epidemiological stuff. It's associational stuff. There's no clinical stuff to really work out how it's interacting. So there are way more important ways of actually, dealing with this. Getting a strong immune system. Meat and the sun is really what you need. I think any Indigenous diet can help if you're in an environment, low stress, no 9 to 5, good community, real food, sunlight, no native EMF. Exactly. Yep. Does a hell of a lot more. Remember also, if you're eating those carbohydrate foods, you're still basically out there depleting. You're out in the sun continuously all day long. You're actually exposed to, from the morning and from dawn to dusk, you're exposed, and also the near infrared, which is therapeutic and healing. So you've got all that where most people are indoors watching TV. Blue light exposed, no red light healing from near infrared, being out in the environment. Completely different. So people say, oh, do a perfect diet. Yeah, what about all the other stuff? But I can't get to sleep. And they're literally looking at their screen until the moment they're about to go to sleep. So they got the melatonin is in the toilet. I can't get to sleep. Oh, obviously, it's more, what we call the carnivore lifestyle, I call it, is basically all these elements. Life is far more complicated than just a couple of steaks. Henry, you're the best, Harry. Thanks, mate. In the early days, your channel, you talked about, the one with the tocotrienols in. Yep, I can't remember. What about the vitamin E dose? It's a low dose vitamin E, which is 19 milligrams. So it's a very low dose compared to the other ones. And it's basically for people that have basically been on a PUFA diet from seed oils in the past. And they're actually, I usually recommend it for people that have come off a seed oil diet, or and then also when you're losing weight, because you may still have some stored PUFA from those days, and you need to basically stabilize that those lipids that are basically stored in your fat cells that are coming out. So that's pretty much it. The body does a bit of that, but it's sort of just to be on the safe side, because you don't want that sort of stuff causing a lot of reactivity around the body. Is that side of things as well. And it's a Jarrow one that I do recommend pretty much, which is a palm oil based one. Yes, you do have to basically be able to leave comments nowadays. I've done that or in the chat line. I've done that deliberately because basically my attitude is, if I'm giving you a benefit, you should give me something back. You should subscribe if you want to ask questions and get information. I think that is fair in that regard, because basically I do this this is not my prime job. I've got a day job. This is basically, well, I don't know about the future, but anyway, currently is not my day job. It's a hobby, me giving back something to the community and people in that regard. The most I get occasionally out of benefits of this is the monetization from YouTube, and which isn't much, a couple of shekels here and there, and occasionally some people shouting me a coffee or two, So, and that's fine if they wish. I don't request any funds from anyone, but I do request people do subscribe if they want to ask and get some information from me, because it is free. I'm not charging, and in many cases, most other people will tell you for consultancies and will charge you and all that, which is fair enough as well if they're doing it as a full-time thing, Many thanks for mentioning your experience with selenium. Yep. Selenium is important. Get it up high, at good levels. It's cancer protective, and it's good for your thyroid as well, in combination with iodine. Yes, they're not good. Look, we actually looked at a couple, remember, yesterday. Remember the sort of rancid crap there was all these low carb bars, protein bars at the supermarket, and we just went through all of them. We were struggling to find one that didn't have, we did find one that had coconut oil. All the other ones had seed oils, canola oil, or one of the other oils. Primarily canola it was. Ridiculous. So here's a protein bar that people think, oh, this is healthy, and it's got seed oils with high amount of, deuterium in it, and primary and secondary oxidative products, I suspect, as well, if we were to test it, and aldehydes. And that's the sort of stuff they sell as a health bar. It's ridiculous, but that's the reality. Yes. Um, do I think that the program drops in cognition starts once 30 is the consequence of a decreased mitochondrial density? Yep, I would say so. I would say it is the key. If you take a look at, Mary Ruddock, she went around all these populations and she was interacting with centenarians amongst some of these tribes. Like one old lady, she was jumping up and down and all that and still had her marble. She could actually ask her questions and she could actually answer without, thinking or wondering or losing it. What did she say? You know? So that showed, and this woman was over 100, way over 100. I think some thought that she was close to 120, but that's, you know, but she was definitely over 100 with certainty. And so there was fundamental difference in somebody on a species appropriate diet in a healthy environment and all that compared to someone who's eating crap, high deuterium crap, is not out at the sun depleting 19 parts per million per hour with most of the body exposed. So yeah, it's not possible. And the latitude, the higher the latitude, the less deuterium depletion, worse. That's why more diseases, the further away from the tropics you go, the diseases actually increase in intensity on the same sort of food, crappy food. So, yeah, so it is a big problem. Why the reason why we see, because young people are basically eating, you just have to go. I walk past hot fast food outlets and all that, and it's all young people. That's all they're eating. By the time they get to 30 and all that, they're already quite sick and declining. These people are going to be really, by the time they get to my age, they're going to be, that's why we're even seeing heart disease now in 20-year-olds and, early 30-year-olds. It's frightening, to say the least. It's absolutely frightening. So, yeah, it's bad. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, pretty much, yeah. When you look at these populations, they do live longer. Carnivore societies live longer, period. You see it amongst the Maasai, over 100. As I say, they talk about, these other carb eating societies, and I go, show me a centenarian amongst them. They can't show me one. I just want one, not two, not three, not four, just one centenarian amongst those tribes. Not friggin' one. Yes, they can live to reproductive age, but give us a break. It's not a species appropriate diet for long life and health. Even amongst like when they actually look amongst centenarians, he's gone now, so we can say anything about him. Ted's better than you, Bart. Uh, Ted's a great fan of this channel. We put Ted on a pedestal. Yes, and so pretty much it's just ridiculous. Yes. Yes, muzzled and dumb is very much the French approach by Tracy. Oh, he's God. She was being nice and he stuck it into it. Mr. K, how dare you? Oh, yeah, exactly. I would be with this stuff. That's how behind I am. I just realised. God. But okay, makes an alliance between the meat militia and the raccoon brigade. Oh God, he's dealt with Rich Burgess omnivore doppelganger. Oh God, what is happening with that vagoonerized young Canadian? He's still alive. He's still passing out on his what was he donuts? That's right, his sugary donuts. Ridiculous. Ah, yes, Danny boy. Yes, little Danny boy. He's fresh out of academia and thinks he's smart as hell. Ah, yes, Tracy. Yes, yes, we love Ted. We definitely love Ted. Okay. Thank my mother for having a premature seizure. ADHD. Yes, yes. Your mother's just another victim, like the rest of us. That's the reality. There's good research showing actually a reduction in actually taurine also helps with improving the gut microbiome. That's one thing where fiber does the opposite. Then with ADHD, things like that, calming and all that. Remember, taurine increases GABA. It actually calming effect. They've actually done a couple of experiments to lower ADHD. So if you've got kids with ADHD, get them off from the meds and give them taurine supplementation and less sugar, or eliminate the sugar if you can. That'll calm them down. Give them a steak. That'll calm them down. According to the modern idiots nowadays, that is blasphemy. Yes, we love Shell. We definitely do. Oh, the meat malicious. Oh, Ted's here. Stop blaming me. Not blaming you, Ted. I'm blaming that other character. Mr. K. He gives you a hard time. Very awful, isn't he? He's really bad, you know. And he uses that whip on you, but well, then again, you may enjoy it. So it may be a. So we won't go into that. Good to see Ted here from the Meat Militia. Absolutely great. Yes, you must be compliant. Bloody crazy. It is a bloody crazy world. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Oh, there is. Yes, there is definitely vitamin C in milk, in raw milk. Do you think that bioelectricity blueprint of the body research will tie into with earthing and deteriorating place? And I see something material science and housing where one combines. Um, there's limited research in a lot of this sort of stuff. I mean, we've got research showing earthing does work. The platelet aggregation um, reduces, but the moment you unearth yourself, things can clump up together in the bloodstream. So it definitely improves that side of things. Deuterium depletion, there's good research now. I mean, we've actually even developed products like DDW25 as an anti-cancer therapy for dogs. Yeah, some of the other stuff, we still have a way to go in terms of really hardcore research. We know that through cytochrome C, we can actually get this is complex 4 in the mitochondrial electron chain. We can it's sort of estimated that we can get about 30% more energy. There's a number of things that seem to show that the viscosity of the water inside and outside and around the mitochondria changes. There's a number of these things, but you know, it's like a lot of things, we understand certain interactions or certain things, but in a deep way, we're still learning. We're still quite primitive in our understandings of a lot of these things. So we've still got a way to go, HD. We've still got a way to go. Body carnivore shakes, 6 raw eggs, half a couple of heavy creams, splash of vanilla, pinch of salt, teaspoon of stevia. Probably don't need the stevia anyway, but probably get the leaf one. The leaf. If you're going to use stevia, get the leaf stevia. It doesn't actually create an aftertaste. You know, that bitter aftertaste you get from stevia. So the leaf one, if you're going to use anything in that regard, body can produce erythritol, so that's another thing, because most of it ends up in the toilet, not in your bloodstream. Blend everything and enjoy. Blender. He may have a blender, Bruce. I don't know. Was he a next vegan? He's never told me. Todd, I gotta go. Ah, yes. You've been told by Pim. Get a move on. I need my steaks. Seems like such a good dude. Yeah, oh, look, Phil's a great dude. Dude, for anyone to treat him that way. Yeah, Phil wants conversation and Dan wants blood. Exactly. Yeah. Ban policy. Yeah. Look, Phil's a really, once you get to know him, and actually, if you've seen him, you don't have to agree with everything people say. And Dan didn't need to agree with everything Phil said. You know, sometimes we have different opinions on certain things, or different views on certain, whether it's politics or anything. The reality is, you've got to be respectful. Now, the way Dan behaved was completely and utterly disrespectful and nasty in some regards. So, but what do you expect? People like that arrogance, the arrogance of vagoonerism, the arrogance of academia, the arrogance of these different areas where people think that they know best, or they have the perfect answers for everything. Rather than accepting and being humble that we don't know everything, and sometimes we can be wrong. And even I've said, I've done a lot of deep research, and so I do have a lot of knowledge to basically provide people with, and I do a lot of analysis of these things. I'm always open to new thinking. If I'm wrong about something, I will correct myself. But these people just have this sort of like they're in a cult or something where, they do not engage their mind, and they will just, and that's why they're very vicious as well. People that are in a cults, if you see a cult leader or a cult follower, they are vicious and hateful. Anyone outside the cult, they have this mentality, unfortunately, and you can see it. They belittle people. They are not willing to even listen to their arguments or their opinions. They just basically are exactly out for blood, nasty as. Yeah, sunful. Where Phil, on the other hand, is such a placid, really easygoing, yes, such calm. He must be getting plenty of taurine in his diet to have such high levels of GABA, to be so calm, to cope with this ridiculous little boy in shorts. Yes, because that's what he is. His qualifications are still not dry on the paper, as Bart would say. You mean piezoelectrics? Yeah. Yeah. I'm deterring depletion. I'm buzzed. Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that piezoelectrics, like the little hairline, sort of nanofibers, could actually be on the coating of vehicles, and as you drive, they are literally vibrating, and they're producing energy rather than solar. You could do it all day round. So rather than having a more of a piezoelectric energy producing sort of device on the skin of your vehicle, yes, and yes, and you're thinking, of what sort of probe are you going to put in your body to actually achieve this deterrent depletion? But you could use basically, if you want to do it on water, yes, whether it could be done more economical. I know where you're going. Yes, rather than having to pay quite a bit of money for it. Yes, actually, it was cheaper. Usually, it's about $3 for 1.5 liters, about $3.80. They had it $3. I got some because I was running out of water for my coffees, and then sometimes they do usually have it at $2.50. The Alpine water, and that's when I buy quite a few because it's worth it. That mm. And I use it primarily for it's my coffees. That's what it is. Yes, yes. Thank you, HD. One tries to keep an open mind on these things and tries to learn. I'm always trying to learn every day. Yeah, he's doing pretty well. The old boy, very well. Very much so. And please hit the like button because you're standing by me. Uh, they will form in high doses. Yes, they definitely will. You just basically, when you're on a high fat, high sugar diet and you take high doses of, you're already eating a lot of foods with oxalates and your body just stores them. They don't release them, so you don't notice. So even if you're taking extra and you produce more oxalate, it's only when you get to excessive levels where the body can't handle it, that's when you start getting things like, you know, kidney stones and stuff like that. Like I actually got when I was doing a lot of spinach and stuff like that. Not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Uh, yes, you could say that. Could call me Omicron Man. Yes, Bart's into the, like, push the stuff to the hilt at the moment. So he's priming. He's definitely priming in that regard. So, yeah, the Punisher. How are you, mate? After the demonisation of certain viral protein inhibitors, Australia and other countries are now, yes, they are pushing it is basically a modified version of ivermectin. It's bullshit. It's again giving these multinationals, you know, a place to sell. And the reality is, we know ivermectin has been around for a very long time, and we know what side effects at dosages and all the issues associated with it. This stuff is new. It hasn't gone through a 5 to 7 year trial period. It hasn't gone through a trial period to be assessed whether it has any severe side effects. This could, do a whole lot of harm to people. Again, more stuff that's being basically allowed with provisional status in our system is beyond me. Exactly. It is bloody criminal what these governments are doing. Absolutely. Ridiculous. Yeah, they've literally taken off the brakes on these companies. They can literally promote and put anything in the market, and it'll just get the tick and flick from these governments. It's absolutely ridiculous when there are things like vitamin D, there are things like a species appropriate diet, or getting people to supplement taurine that helps their immune system, their T lymphocytes. There are things like ivermectin that have been shown quite clearly to stop reduced replication by 90%. So why wouldn't you combine these things that are not going to do any harm? Oh, that's right. Our dear friends in the big pharma can't make big profits. Damn, that's why. Fucking ridiculous, to say the least. Yes, yes. Priming does work. Look, I've done priming in the past, um, but a sort of a ketotic priming. Robbie, uh, get your head out of the gutter. I bet he does. I think the Telegram group is that a some sort of group out there on Facebook or something? Buffering it is because of spermidine. What's something with which is I think it's a compound of ribosomes. Buffering. I'm confused. Can't move on. uh, don't know what that question was about. Did I miss the sort of the whole thing? I'm probably not fat adapted or brain adapted at the moment. Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. We're playing with games. Oh, everybody's a comedian on this channel. Oh, fantastic! Better be careful what I read out, and I'm probably going to end up with egg on my face. Yes, free range. Yep, yep, yep. What about 5 years ago? Joe, they're all having pure bloods. They're all having basically conversations amongst themselves. Yes. Yes, yes. And they have it on the tennis court. Yeah, he should, actually. Yeah, you're right, he should. You know, should actually also get, a whole lot of like needles and throw them around and go, you can have your bloody, you can have your bloody jabs. Something like that. Do a crazy stunt. Why not? Gwyneth, a lot of old people I know with edema, yes, a lot of water retention, nothing like it. But they don't want to do anything about it. Yes, exactly. Oh, they like their kibble. They like their kibble. They're given diuretics. Ah, yes, doctors will give them diuretics. They can eat their kibble and they're so, so happy. Just say they're eating too much salt, like their doctors tell them. I mean, some of them are consuming so little, they are actually nearly, we're talking about deficiency levels. But yeah, it's bizarre. If they only took the carbs away, as we know in the low carb community, you take the carbs away, that water weight really drops, doesn't it? Very rapidly. That's where you have to be careful with the electrolyte side at that transition point between an extremely edema state kibbalist, and when you become a non-kibbalist, then yes, you can see water going out of your system very, very fast. You become, yes, let's say, very well acquainted with the toilet seat for some days in that regard, in getting rid of a lot of water retention. Yes. I think like sun salt and having 130 well grandkids sex. Yeah, yeah. I guess that. When you sort of know that, you could have used a scientific term like and better reproduction rather than just diving into the gutter. Damn carnies. Ugh, just as bad as me. I mean, that's the sort of jokes I make. The inappropriate one, and especially Ted, But he's part of the meat militia, so he's more than justified in doing that. Ah, yes. Most people don't want to put any effort into fixing their health. A lot of people are brainwashed. That's a problem, Gwyneth. A lot of people are brainwashed in believing that it's permanent, it's lifelong, they can't do anything about it. Yeah, it's unfortunate. A lot of the rest of us were as well, thinking that certain things like seed oils were absolutely great and magic for us. And that as well, Shell. Exactly. They think that basically there's always a magic pill. There's a quick solution. Yeah. I think I've mentioned this before. You only have to Google, um, 1 day miracle cures or 1 day or, oh, you can reverse this in a week or anything along those lines. And you will find those YouTubes are having millions. I think there was one that actually said, promised um, a miracle cure for one. I can't remember the ailment, but it was about, what did they say? I think they said within 3 hours or something like that. It got over, I think, 50 or 60 million hits or views. Are so many people gullible? Maybe. But I think people are basically being conditioned so much with a magic pill. Your doctor's giving you your magic pill, your naturopath's giving you your magic pill, you know. Where for me, I say, 3 months for B vitamins or with vitamin D combination and a healthy diet, a species appropriate one. That being where these people say, well, you've got to take these supplements lifelong and we'll increase the dose or we'll adjust the dose because you need to come back so I can adjust the dose for you. We need to do testing to work out where your levels are and we'll do adjustments, even though a lot of the actual tests are useless because it's really hard to, unless you do a biopsy, you don't really know what's inside the cell. You're only seeing what's in the bloodstream. So there's a lot of that bullshit as well that's happening. And as a consequence, you've got these people running back and forward doing these useless tests to basically have the MD to adjust their meds and basically the ND, the naturopath, to adjust their supplements. Ridiculous. It's like the MTHFR. Oh, we need to adjust this folate and we need to adjust the B12 and we need to do this and you've got a genetic thing, you're going to be on it for life. Sorry, dear. And we need to make sure you've got the right dosages in your bloodstream. So come back, pay me 50, 60 bucks, 70, 100 bucks, and I'll adjust your meds again, all your supplements, and basically back and forth, back and forth. Great business model. Return customers. They never leave you. I mean, if you want to set up a business, the best business is to be a naturopath or a doctor. Absolutely the best business. Return customers, especially in this environment. And it's getting worse. The more plant-based you recommend they go, oh, God, they're going to be sicker and coming back to adjust everything. They'll have a list, of things that need to be adjusted and tested constantly. Absolutely ridiculous it is. But that's the world we're living in. Yes, they're magic pills that need always to be adjusted. Crazy. Yes, I need high vibration as well. Yes, let me move out of the gutter and I'll come back to normality. Oh, look, yeah, that's right. And some arrogantly, so that their doctor know better than me drives me nuts. Yes, and if you take a look at some of their doctors, you go, that guy's completely unhealthy. How many drugs is he on? He knows best. But then he tells you the bullshit. Oh, it's forever. It's progressive. Oh, you're never going to be cured. But we can manage it for you. So just make sure you come often. make sure we do the tests, because my other friends who are basically in the labs and tests and all that, they need business as well. And I get kickbacks from them. I get free holidays and other things and gifts on, Christmas and stuff like that for being such a good client of theirs, sending so many of my clients to them. You know, it's a virtuous circle. Um, Great money spinner, unless you're the victim paying for all this. Yeah, crazy. But people just can't see that. Yes. Oops. If you want to stay healthy, stay out of the doctor's office. Exactly, Shelley. Precisely. The only time I go back is to do specific tests that I know to find out how I'm progressing with, like I did for just check my heart. Now I know that I've got no fibrosis in the heart, but I don't have to worry about doing that test again. The only other one that I have to do that I haven't got around doing it, I need to do it. Just keep on forgetting, which is the one, the fibrosis in the lungs. That's come down from the last 2019 test. I need to do one this year to find out exactly where has it gone to zero or is it nearly finished in terms of fibrosis. It used to be glassed completely, not anymore. So it is getting better. But that's the only reason where you want to track whether you need to make adjustments to some supplementation like taurine levels or stuff like that that breaks down fibrotic tissue. That actual research indicates that that does. Not a drug that causes a whole lot of side effects that doesn't do the job anyway, just prevents it from supposedly getting worse. Supposedly. Bullshit is the operative word. Only real nutrients that come from animal foods are the ones that actually really start reversing things, as long as you're not engaging the Randall cycle. Yes. Yes, exactly. Is that working? 2 days ago, I was scared by my it was only max out on reps, ended up doing 2.5 max. Yes. What do they say? You got to be, you always have to rest as well. Yes, you need to rest and recoup. Um, so yeah, you have to be your own advocate there, very much so. I think it's really important. But I think it's really important that people basically take charge of their life in every respect. Um, it's also very important for your own mental state. You need to be in control to some extent. You know, it's usually, they've actually done experiments and they've actually seen that when you're not in control, you tend to be more depressed. You tend to have more of these, the more in control you are of your own life, and you empower yourself to learn and acquire that knowledge, mentally you're healthier and much stronger. Yeah. You got to be your own advocate, and you're right, Jill. Anyway, more of that deep emotional thinking. Hard to have a bad day or a bad time. Yep, very much. Uh, uh, uh. Yes, it's 1.4 Ks. Yes, thank you. Yes, it's been like a grinding, slow slog in the last couple of, what is it now? 3 getting on to 4 years. It's just been like anemic. So absolutely slow as. No, it's not even been that. What am I saying? Even less than that. Um, let me just check out my channel. Go and see what's the earliest, oldest video that I actually had. Oh, what is that doing? Videos. Right down to the bottom. Obviously, I was in this sort of game a bit earlier because I was doing stuff with Bart and Pim and people like that much earlier than when I didn't start my channel until much later on. But that's right. 2 years ago, the actual channel. There you go. 2 years. But for a year earlier than that, I was basically doing stuff with Bart on his channel. And yeah. So, anyway, yeah. Moving on. Blinkers just needs a good VR headset, virtual reality. Depends where they lock him up. What's next saying? I'm off to bed. Fair enough, mate. And thanks for being here. Yes. Well, we know. I know the incident. Richard told me about it. Not pretty. You should know better. You're behaving too much. Way too young. That's how I used to behave in the past, A carnivore diet isn't reversing, isn't making you, won't take you back to your childhood. It'll make you look a bit better, but, let's not push the whole idea, Tracy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were thrown out. Precisely. Yes, exactly. Well done to that person. It's his private business. They just can't go in there and push him around. Who the hell do they think they are? Gestapo? Yeah, exactly. All of us are in a very different. Everybody's in a difficult situation, especially with these crazy governments and their mandates and everything else under the sun. They don't care the carnage that they've created and are continuing to create. Absolutely ridiculous it is. Probably ignorant would be the. I'd be trying to eavesdrop on Harry's 24/7, stealing all the secrets. My local barbecue store in New Zealand wouldn't let us in without the scanning the vaccine pass and wearing a mask. There was no cases in my area. Yeah, I know, Tom. Yeah, crazy. It's Yeah, it's a bit on the wild side. Very much on the wild side. Yeah, it's becoming very weird in some areas. And New Zealand's a bit. You guys have gone a bit crazy in some regards. One of our US Supreme Court justices actually lied on record, telling the court exaggerated C19 numbers of children and C9 in hospitals. The Supreme Court fails the Americans. I hate to, yeah. Look, they're just as infallible as anyone else. And can make, and also they're not trained in that area. And if you've got experts that come in and tell them all the nonsense, yeah, that's what's happening. You know, I bet there's probably not one expert that's actually turned up in there and said, "Oh, let me just let you know, dear justices, um, children from 5 to 11 don't even have a fully developed ACE2 receptor. So really, they're not even going to basically, the thing can't even get inside to actually replicate. So to create any of these, like a big viral load or whatever, so the kiddies are not really a problem. So they probably don't need to have a close encounter with Jabba the Hutt. But do you think anyone would have turned out and said actually that and explained some of the human physiology to these judges to understand these things? No. And that's the problem, you know? Yeah, exactly. They are part of the problem. That's true. But they're not, I don't blame them because they've been brainwashed, but they are part of the problem. And we unfortunately have a situation where people are basically, just following the rules, blindly. They did that in Nazi Germany. They've done it in a number of other parts of the world, and a lot of people got harmed in the process. And it is true. I like how you say follow the science and they don't. Yes, and then don't. Um, yeah, I'm not sure whether that's being directed at me or not. Uh, the scientific method is a method where you can actually test and is testable proofings. Um, epidemiology is not science. Epidemiology is basically probabilities that something may or may not be, or may. Then you have to do research. Um, so anything that's you know not experimental is not what we call pure science. Pure science is experimental. You can replicate it. You can repeat something and get the same result or something similar. That's replicatable science. And whether you get something similar or exactly the same, like 1 + 1 = 2, or you may may get within a value, within a band, something appearing, that's because of the fuzziness of nature. And I'm not going to get into quantum biology to explain the fuzziness of nature, but that is part of that fuzziness of nature. But what these people are doing is they're just fabricating things. That's not science. So I criticize them. I call them pseudoscientists because they fabricate things and they make shit up and they don't apply the right methods that have been well established for a very long time. Also, the safety methods they don't apply because we had safety methods. You could not put out in the market a jabber of any sort unless you went through a 5 to 6, 7 year trial period to identify all the risk groups and also try to mitigate that sort of stuff. The same thing like medicines have to go through a trial period, and even they sometimes have side effects and problems because there's a lot of shenanigans that actually take place by the companies. They will take a big group of 1,000 people and then they'll find out anybody that has side effects and they'll eliminate them. Then they'll do another, and they do these privately. Then they'll do another test and then eliminate that group, and then they're left with people that, due to genetics or whatever else, they show very few symptoms or problems, and then they do short-term periods of studies, and they say, between the placebo and the control and the intervention group, there was no difference, no real any massive side effects or anything like that. Obviously, because you've already weeded out all the potential problematic people, and you've come down to a group of probably 100 people or 50 people from 1,000. If you take a look at all these studies that eventually get published, some of them are down to 5 people or 6 or 7 people, or a very small group. And you go, where did everyone else go? How come they do these big studies with 100 people, and here this study is only showing about 10 people in 2 groups, 10 in one, 10 in the other, 20 people? And you go, huh? It's because they've done all these other ones. That's why years later do we find out all these side effects. That's that's not science. That is basically corporate corruption. That's a different thing altogether. What we're talking about, science, is empirical, where testable truth and stuff like that. Very different thing. Yep. I've already done a video that actually covers that. Basically, there's not much difference in the death rate. It's bullshit, pretty much. What we're being delivered out there is but hogwash. It's absolutely crap. And it's the one having to, with Phil Escott and Bart Kay, schoolboy Dan Wilson. And I actually showed the death rates. Go and check that out. So let's see that one there. I'll actually just share it quickly.
You might have seen videos like this before, but here's the big secret. Anyone can make one of these videos in a few minutes. The latest video from Bart Kay, and he was with Phil Escott, and they were talking
about this guy called Dan, and there's those death rates. And I explain everything. That's a projection up there, so we ignore that. But there's not much difference between all these years. As you can see, there's not much difference. So it's just bullshit. Bullshit a different day. And that is, the source is the United Nations. Well, so the governments submit their death rates for the whole year. It's crap. Absolute crap. So I've called it Phil Escott and Bart Kay schoolboy Dan Wilson, who gets US death rates wrong, because he actually said that they were massive, which is an absolute nonsense. He made it up, or just heard some idiot out there saying the same thing, and he just repeated the same fallacy. So that's the one there. So I've covered that pretty well. So if you want to take a look at that video, you'll basically, General Jane, you'll basically see exactly what I'm saying. That's the US death rates. That's official document of all-cause mortality in the US for all those years from the 1950s to 2021, and then they've got the projections. Projections are just projections. Only at the end of the year will we know where they end. They always seem, it's really funny how projections really jump dramatically in all these. And then when you actually look, even their own, sort of increase, decrease type is a flat line. So, yeah, projections just there where they tighten the numbers on the bar so it looks bigger. It's magnified, but really it's probably like a flat line when you actually push it out to 100,000, like Bart said today in his, when you actually, because all those are per 100,000 or a million or whatever, it's usually 100,000. So when you look at it like that, you can hardly see the difference between the two lines. They deliberately magnify that to basically show the difference. But that's deceptive because it makes people think that it's bigger than it really is, the difference. And that's a problem in the way statistics are charted in things. And if people don't look at that, because you have to look at the side and they say, so many in 100,000 or whatever. And then if it doesn't go to 1,000, you go, okay, they've kept the numbers down. So to magnify that effect, to make it look bigger than it really is, as an image. So in your head, it's stuck. Oh, look at how it jumps like this or whatever. But in reality, is when you actually look at the statistics are very similar. It's background noise. Those little variations between year, half 1% this way or 1% that way, that shifts between that means sort of average. That little shifting that's actually happening is just normal. It's background noise. One year you may have a few more deaths than another year for a whole lot of factors. It's irrelevant. But that's how it's been going for the last, since the 1950s. So that tells you something. That tells you there's a lot of bullshit out there about this. Where when 1918 was around, you had this dramatic jump. That wasn't a blip. That was a real pandemic. And that's the difference. And, numbers, data, raw data never lies. All-cause mortality is all the deaths. You could argue, there were so many people and these were misdiagnosed, or there were more people that should have been down as heart attacks and rather something else. You can argue all these sort of things. But with real raw data of how many people died that year, that's basically it. Doesn't matter from what, that is the number. That's how many people they put 6 foot under, and that's really important because that tells you that basically, you saw the numbers. Where's the dramatic jump? There isn't that dramatic jump. If it was basically like 3-4 times the previous year, I'd go, yeah, bloody hell, there is a absolute pandemic out there killing. I mean, if you remember, the bubonic plague took out a third of the population in Europe, a third. So that would be like in America, 330 million Americans. That would be 110 million Americans. That's what it would be, a third. That would be massive. That's a pandemic, obviously. You run and hide to make, especially if you don't know what you can do to mitigate it, to prevent it. But the sort of levels that we're getting is just seasonal. It's the same sort of levels. It's just nonsense. But, if you've got charlatans and propagandists and all that, and they want to make a political career or money out of it or whatever, they'll sit there and just basically tell you and if you tell a lie long enough, eventually people start believing it. Even Goebbels said that, who was a great German propagandist in the Nazi regime. He actually wrote that down, that if you say something, you repeat it long enough, people start believing it. And that is exactly what's happened. And it's only critical thinkers like ourselves, people that come to this channel, that basically go, hold on, there's something wrong with this picture. Because we go and look at the data, we go and look at the raw numbers and stuff, go, something wrong here. This doesn't sort of seem to gel with the narrative that they're pushing. But most people don't engage their mind. They just go, bah, bah, sheep, bah, bah, bah. That's all they do. Yes, the visual is awful. I know. Even I scared myself. I know Luke is probably taking a picture of that, an image of that. He's probably already going to make a nice image of that, aren't you, Lukey? Well, there you go. Ease. Yes. You all need to be registered. You all need to be tagged. Exactly. You all need to be tagged. God, such feral animals running around and thinking for themselves. What has the world got to? Unacceptable. Yes, it's bloody crazy. Yes, those inconvenient statistics. Yes. They just don't gel for them, God, I'm surprised they didn't fabricate. Yeah, but it's really hard to basically do that because there's so many people involved in collecting the stuff. So it's really hard to sort of do that. That's why it's a good thing that there are more people involved. When there are less people involved collecting things, like researchers that are getting paid to do dodgy stuff. That's when you get pseudoscience and crap. But when there's a lot of collection points, it's really hard to, even if somebody corrupts it a bit here or there, it's still in the wash. When it comes out in the wash, it's going to be a few, small percentage, few numbers here or there that are not really going to, in the scheme of things, going to really make it, you know. But if it goes through one, like, let's say, one sort of government, well-run or organised, like you had in, an authoritarian sort of regimes where they could actually control all the stuff, they just make it up. So that's different. They don't even have to, they collect supposedly, and then they just throw away, like some epidemiologists do. They just ignore the data, adjust it, and then tell you that this is really what reality is, even though that's not what was observed. Yeah, fantastic. This is modern day science. Dan loves this sort of stuff. Yes. Adjustments. Oh, yes. Nothing like an adjustment. Yes. Kind of what it is for forgives you. uh, but but don't cheat, or he will send you where he sends the vegans. Yeah, exactly. In basically gut health hell. Get it right, Harry. Gut hell. That's where he'll send you. Uh, Not drinking seed oil. Why? That is why you got sick. Remember, you did it wrong. Yeah, I did it wrong. That's true, Nick. Did it very wrong. Yes, exactly. Preach it, brother. Thanks, Shelley. Uh, yes, it's a crazy world we live in. Yes. Any reason why you cheat? I think I covered that earlier. I'm a human. Let's talk about the sins against Randall cycle. Yes, exactly. Philip Randall would be turning in his grave. Yes, exactly. He'd be turning in his grave. Ah, yes, exactly. Exactly. That would have been my exact comment. Don't even have to do it. Like service, free comments. Perfect. I'm 74 and started keto 3 years ago and can tell a big difference in my health, but still have way to go, one day at a time. Exactly. Always patience. Yep. And also, you don't have to rush. I mean, obviously you've been doing it a bit longer, but even people sort of, transition because you still need all the enzymes and everything to sort of adjust. in that regard. And sometimes if you've been doing like keto, you've been doing more plants, and they can have a bit of a negative effect on the way the gut lining and the stomach is modulated and regulated. So you sort of have to, you'll know from when I do my new video on the reasons why. So you have to sort of transition to not get a lot of the, like some of the gut issues that do take place. And taurine does help as a supplement in the short term. The long term as well, in your age, you're synthesizing less and you've probably got damage. So it's not a big priority for your body in terms of triage of what needs to be transcripted. So it's probably a good thing for people who have never been ancestrally and now come late to the ancestral lifestyle that probably need a bit of support of taurine, a couple of grams a day. Hopefully, remember just the blood pressure issue that can be, because it can lower blood pressure because it's an osmolyte. It readjusts blood pressure to a more normal range. But yeah, so you've got to be careful to slowly go with that stuff if you're on such blood pressure meds, and get them adjusted and get off them as quick as possible. Yeah, yes. That was the stuff that I was saying earlier. Photonics and deuterium. Look, they're in a warm climate though. They've got all their body exposed, and so they do deuterium deplete a bit more than the rest of us at 19 parts per million per hour. So and it's only seasonal. Remember, in the tropics you only get 2 seasons, so it's about 2 months that they get, 2 to 4 months depending on which part of the tropics they are. That get fruit. The rest of the year they don't get any fruit. So that's the reality. You know, traditionally they wouldn't have got any fruit. Nowadays, obviously, with agriculture and all that, you can access it all year round. That's a different thing. Yeah, but back then, no. It would have been 2 seasons in the tropics and 1 season for the rest of the world. Is the way it goes. Is yes, we love Ted. We definitely love Ted, Tracy. Yes. You must follow them. You're so opinionated, you people. Shock horror. Yes, nothing like lobbyists. Great people. Yes. They circulate so much money around in the political system. What are you saying? They help to grease the political wheels. You know, our impoverished politicians would be struggling without them. You know, have you no feelings for them? You know, otherwise you're depriving your local politician of his next sports car, potentially, or overseas trip fully paid. And, I mean, they live such stressful lives. They need a couple of months in a beautiful paradise, tropical paradise, all paid expenses, by their dear and close friends in the big pharma. Stop being a bigot. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just think of it, band parlors. You know, Jabba the Hutt is their aspirational thing. You know, he's nice and plump, loves his carbs, and loves giving the old jab. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got the tail, remember? He's a dirty little thing, yes. So, yes. So he's the perfect, poster boy for this new movement. Stop being a bigot. See you, Tracy. If I was in charge, I would ban clothing. From one pervert to another. Keep going before I get into trouble by saying something inappropriate. Yeah, he's a great gentleman, So, absolutely. Did the plain Indians eat only bison and were taller than European soldiers of the time? Pretty much. Pretty much. There's good evidence that they were much faster than even Usain Bolt, because they were taller, so they could actually do bigger strides. Because Usain Bolt can actually not outrun a bison, but these guys could actually put the clothing of on top, the skin of a bison, and actually run ahead of it, and would drag all the other bisons until they got to the cliffside because they would just fly over the cliff. It was one way of actually getting a lot of animals killed without having to use traditional hunting methods. And it's why they were very successful at hunting. But they used to use this method of driving them over cliffs at specific areas. So, yeah, so they were pretty good at it. And there's actually an image, when in the past, before they had photography, now when somebody visits a politician, like in America, the president, they always have like photos taken for the event. Like the president of the United States will stand or sit next to another leader or another person who's visiting, and they will be photographed. Back in those days, they used to paint. They used to have, like in courts, even in courts now, they still draw certain things. Well, back then, they used to draw or paint, or draw and then paint the actual event. And these guys were well over 7 foot. These guys were ginormous, a lot of giants. And remember, the president at the time that was actually, I can't remember the president, he was slightly over 6 foot. These guys were taller than him. Two Plains Indians who were really tall, and they could actually run ahead. They were, much faster in that regard. So it was, but unfortunately, obviously we don't. Back then, we're talking about a very long time now, 200 odd years. You didn't have, the modern day methods of basically recording and photographing and videoing and all this sort of stuff. But also at the same time, they had no reason to exaggerate or lie. They just depicted the persons as they were, because that's what they did, because it was an official document, an official visit. Because then you didn't have photos. You had to basically record the official visit. And the reason why we know that they are taller than 7 foot is because the president of the time was taller than 6 foot. And we were able to estimate from the actual drawing, the height of these other people, these two Indians. So we know that they were taller. And we know that they could outrun a bison in front to drag them over. So, which means that they could actually run faster because they had bigger strides. Being taller, you got bigger strides. So they could run faster than the bison, which even Usain Bolt today, who's the fastest human on the planet as a sprinter, can't do. Can't get the same speed that a bison can at full speed. Can't get the same speed. So, yeah. I mean, How do you explain it? This was actually seen by many of the colonists at the time of these Indians running ahead. And some even who had drawing skills drew the incidents. So there's evidence for that, historical evidence. So yes. But could I provide you the evidence today? No, because they're all kibble eating. All their descendants are kibble eaters and not as tall. And they're very sick as well with diabetes and all sorts of diseases as well. So all we've got is that evidence of the past and stories. But I don't doubt them because I look at other tribal populations in Africa that consume very high animal food diets and get high leucine levels and tend to be very large. Obviously, bison has got slightly higher leucine levels, and it is the leucine content. If you take a look at all tribal people around the world, when you look at the leucine amount, the branched chain amino acids, so to speak, in the actual diet, that really determines how tall one is. So if you really want a tall kid when they're young, obviously the genetics of 3 generations, is going to work against them, but you can actually boost some of those by getting more animal foods in, or if you're struggling to feed them, give them a bit of supplemental in their yogurt, a bit of supplemental leucine. Put 3 grams in there every day. You'll get a bit of a difference result. Look, he's done some video recordings of yours truly, or image recordings. Oops. I'm drowned in dairy. I imitate sheep. I actually healed heart disease. We can't make that claim. Even though the fibrosis is gone, I can't make that claim. You know what it's like, Lukey? You can't make any claims. It's just the reality. I wish but you can't. It's just, yeah. That is the reality of this world. Like even Phil, Escott here, he's actually seen results and all that. Oh, zoom out. Hold on. Is there more? Did I miss stuff in that? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's zoomed in 250. Okay. Gotcha. That's right, because I was actually doing that other video. I forgot all about it. Yeah. Sorry. Let's do that again. Damn useless. One can be useless. Okay. I drown in dairy. You're paleo. No, not the same. I imitate sheep. You are sheep. We're not the same. Very much so. I actually healed heart disease. You believe in a vegan fairy tale studies. No, we're not the same. Definitely not. Yes, veganerized fairy tales. Oh, poor little things. They love their little epidemiological, butts is a better dodgy studies. Or junk rubbish, to be more precise. Yes, very much so. Good for you. Good for you. Yes, you should earth yourself as most often as you can. Very good for you. And the older we are, even better. Um, Everybody should do it, actually, So, actually, what was said earlier? Naked, walking around naked, barefoot. Yes, yes. I think a lot of us would be locked up very quickly. Uh, I do. The only times I haven't is when I'm really, really stressed about something that has happened, or when I've actually had alcohol. Yeah, that always disrupts my sleep after I've had alcohol. So yeah, that's bloody annoying. It's the only, and then if you haven't had enough B vitamins, you wake up like shit the next day as well. Yes, such an enjoyable intoxication. Sharp, sharpshooting, and a bit of Ruteri. That'll help. Grow your big balls. Oh, God. More about sleep amongst yous. Do, 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 do. Les mentioned hypothyroid signs, muscle weakness, muscle pain, low stress tolerance, long recovery, post period, blurry vision, being clammy than normal, hard time picking words. Yes, you're way beyond that now. But I had to get up to 80 nanograms per milliliter or 200 millimoles per liter in terms of vitamin D levels. And yes, that at that level you can silence those genes, you know, and turn off some of the autoimmunity genes associated. Yes, very, very important. Yes, it can be frustrating, but you know, species appropriate diet will fix this problem. You know, this problem is amongst the kibble eating population. It's not amongst, you don't find it, you don't find this condition, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or anything like that. You don't find it amongst Maasai. You don't find it amongst the Samburu of the Kalahari. You don't find it amongst the Inuit. But you do find amongst the kibble eating people. Surprise, surprise. You know, why things don't function properly when you don't get proper nutrition. So that's really what it is. And sun's very important because for autoimmunity and proper regulation of the immune system, your immune system requires a lot of good levels of vitamin D. Period. You know, even if you're on a carnivore diet and your vitamin D levels are in the toilet, you can have problems. Health problems, because this vitamin D levels are so important in regulating and modulating the immune system and a lot of other systems in the body. The calcium, metabolism, bone health, you name it. So, as I say, sun, salt, and meat. I don't say that accidentally. For good digestion, you know, so all these sort of things. And that's the other reason where Raymond is actually talking to Bart and saying a lot of salt when you're actually priming because you do need the ability to, get higher, sodium, the chloride part. And obviously, together synergistically with the chloride and the taurine in the animal food, you will actually get better, much lower, pH and better absorption. And because when you're consuming that level of volume, you definitely need very low pH and supporting it to digest that stuff. Yes. Anyway, lung tests would be interesting. Yeah. Interesting for me. I don't care about others, whether they find it interesting, but it would be for me, especially when I've gone from a glassed lung with fear of cancer now to a one that's actually more than, well, I don't really know, anywhere probably between 70 and 80% reversed, but all these tests are never 100%. They estimate. So if it's down to very, like you can't see anything more or less, I'll be happy. And I'll just continue, because the taurine I still got mitochondrial damage. I still need some of these things to help me along as I heal further. So not completely there myself. I did too much damage, unfortunately. Any take on yeah, look, blood vessels around fat soluble vitamin. Look, a lot of this has to do with matrix metalloproteinases. I just can't remember the ones. Which ones are there? I just can't remember exactly. There are these things I've talked about before. They get generated in the actual in your liver, but I can't remember the ones, the specific enzymes that cause this problem. And I can't remember the exact cofactors. I think I'm definitely sure that one of the cofactors is menoquinone 4, but it's the second most important. I think the other one may be retinol. It probably is retinol, then vitamin D. I think it is like retinol, menoquinone 4, and then vitamin D as a less certain transcription factors are involved. And yeah, really can't remember exactly. Do you have this problem with those arterial your arteries around close to your skin or stuff like that, creating those growth type things on your skin? It's unregulated cell proliferation. It's not it's not cancerous or anything like that, but there are some derangements that can actually cause this. It's usually a deficiency in fat soluble vitamins. It may also be a niacin deficiency, because niacin does deal with clearing up some of that inflammation, reducing the expression of MMPs, matrix metalloproteinases, in the skin. So you're probably getting enough fat soluble vitamins if you're on a carnivore diet. You may need a bit extra niacin, I would say, to help along with that sort of side. Yeah. I think that's, you may have to take a supplemental to help it clear up. I probably should look in some of these. I haven't really covered the skin stuff a lot. I've talked in general, but I do have a lot of stuff in folders that I've read, but I need to go in and properly work out some protocol biohack when it comes to this how to I know that even taurine has a bit of a modulating an antioxidant type effect, but there are a few other amino acids as well in that regard. And I still haven't. I'm not 100% sure whether we should be basically sort of like maybe getting creams that have got some of this stuff plus some of the amino stuff, or whether we can make some stuff to sort of help that along in that tissue type. Because that's always a bit of a situation, like you have to saturate the body nearly to try and get it in all these tissues, which is helpful because it helps the other stuff. But whether there's any quicker methods, yeah, it's probably something I need to sort of get into it and sort of yeah, yeah, probably do. Yeah, I probably need to find. I probably need to do a bit more research on it in that regard. Yeah, so need to work out the. I haven't actually. I know in general about it, but I haven't actually looked at like the enzymes that are involved and look at and try to find some research. That's what I usually do. Once I've looked at the enzymes, I'll go and try and find esoteric research where somebody's done, like mechanistic studies in isolation for that enzyme. And then you go, okay, they did this to the enzyme, or they gave this nutrient or that nutrient. It seemed to make the enzyme behave in this way. And then, because it is a sort of a, oops, don't do that, Harry. You're going to make a mess of it. Stop clicking. There is in the endothelium, there is this sort of cell proliferation that's happening, and the matrix metalloproteinase sort of enzymes, but there are some other enzymes as well. I think there is some signaling there that happens, but it's just very vague in my head. It's a long time that I read some of this sort of stuff because I had some skin stuff that I was dealing with. I just cannot remember it exactly. But at some stage, I'm going to go back to those folders and do some video on. It's sort of a low priority because I've got the other ones to do with cancer and everything else under the sun. But it's something that I will, in probably mid-year, I'd be doing some things on the skin and stuff like that, and how to regulate better these enzymes is stuff that I'll be looking into. So yeah, eventually, I'll get around doing it. Yep. Anyway, it's hard to remember some stuff when you've only read it once, quite a long time ago. Trying to rattling my brain. Yes. Yes. Look, people are like that. When I tell people that I can help with things they are that they are complaining about, they want to know if they can keep this, that, or the other until I tell them no, then they aren't interested. Yeah, look, as I said, we all, even I have some cheats, let alone most of these people that are addicted. I actually say to people, you should send them to a person like Pim. And let me just bring this up. Don't do that. Click certain things and it goes to bloody. Anyway. Okay. Let me share this. have to zoom in and I have to remember to zoom out again, that I have a tendency not to. So I've actually rearranged the stuff because Bart's been getting too much support, and we've got Ted over 1,000. They're all fine. So that's all the other featured stuff. These two boys need to start creating a bit of content in that regard, so to make themselves interesting to other people. It's Mary back there, and there's also the busy human, Sarah. So get her up to 1,000. If you haven't subscribed to her, you should. She's got some good information. British friend of Bart's. She's a nice lady. And that's Bart's sort of physics, science type thing and all that. He hasn't really done much recently, so yes, but trying. I've reset the promotional stuff, so I've got Pim up here to try and get her a bit higher. There's also the Smart Diabetics Academy. So that's the actual one that I would go to in that regard. So go to my featured ones. It's a second one, Smart Diabetic Academy, and that provides basically a lot of information on addictions. So I would say General Jane, I would definitely subscribe to Pim and her Smart Diabetics Academy, and I'd also basically post it and promote it within your friends' circles, because she does a lot of stuff on addictions, and a lot of these people are addicted. That's the reality. And sometimes you need to know how to work with people that are addicted. And, I mean, that's Pim's day job. It's not your day job. And so it's probably better that they actually get those sort of people. So do go to the featured channels that I've got, which is on the main page, on the home page, towards not the exact bottom, but about here, featured channels, and go and hit the subscriber thing for Pim's Smart Diabetics Academy, and do share it around on your Facebook channels and stuff like that. Get Pim known. She's really good at dealing with those sort of addictions. And so let's promote her, pretty much. And then you've got a number of other channels here. You can actually, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Why haven't you, in a sense? So I'll have to zoom out back to 100 because I'll forget it otherwise. And so there they are, the featured ones. So there's the whole lot of them. And my playlists up here. So I've got definitely a whole lot of playlists, and so I keep that private what I watch, because I watch Greek stuff and all that sort of stuff. And other things probably uninteresting to people. Things like I've caught it, they got it wrong. There's one on Eric. There's a couple of others that probably should go under that one anyway. But yes, then there's my hypotheses. I'll probably create more in that in the future. Free speech, vegans, myths and falsehoods, the microbiome sort of playlists. You got my announcements, which probably not Mary's sort of stuff, things that are there, which are sort of like blue zones and stuff like that. People that want to really get a bit of information in regards to the blue zones, you can go to the Mary Ruddock one. And then I've got on supplements here, 4, probably need to make more. Infections, 3. And the live streams, obviously, they're the big ones. That was one of that I've put there for apple cider vinegar. Myths that Ken put there, because people ask me. So I usually say just go and check what Ken's pretty much agree with him on that one. Male health, there was a bit on this one on testosterone, this one on probiotics. There's 4. Bodybuilding, there's 3, and this is the one that I was going to talk about. That's my chats with Pim. Obviously, the C19 is 24. There's quite a lot there that I have. I actually looked at it a couple of days back, and I go, shit, I didn't realize I made so many. And my first one, if you go right back to the beginning, was all about vitamin D. Surprise, surprise. It strengthens one's immune system with a good vitamin D status. And since then, most of the stuff that's come through, there's a historical one. That's the ancient Greeks on their N15. I need to do more on N15, but there are others that need to be done. So that'll be later in the year. The N15 stuff, that's my life chats with Bart. Some general clips is about 51, health issues 29, micronutrients 10. Then there's my chats with Bart, that's about 18. And we go into some of the stuff. That's some of my selections. The Grill Philosophy guys that do a number of dishes that people may find interesting in terms of certain food preparations, some Greek carnivorous type meals in that regard. So, yeah, the one with Pim, I'll just go into that here. Usually mention it now and then. Stop time reading. What a message some people are giving. Don't read, be a dumbass. We'll tell you exactly what to believe and listen to and all that. Anyway, let's move on before I say too much. There's the dietary guidelines, which I do cover. The first one I did cover with Pim. The origins of some of this and the Walter Kempler, the low fat stuff and where it's coming from and all that research way back in the 1930s. So if people have never seen that, then I did the on the fats, animal unsaturated fats, which is the PUFA stuff and all that. That was quite a comprehensive one that we went into the fats of that side. The probiotics, I did a bit of there. And this is the one that, with, the Dave Feldman and stuff like that, I mentioned this a lot, the ApoE genotype 2, 3, 4 diets. Wide, so that's on that one. That's these are long chats that I've actually had with Pim on these stuff where we go into a bit of a deeper way in looking at these sort of things. So I'll stick that playlist of me and Pim in the chat box down here for people to look. Go and check them. They're probably stuff that you've never heard about. Very insightful. And the chats with Bart, there's even one there with the chimps in the savannah region, behaving potentially like our early ancestors. Very insightful. To understand how evolution over time from within species and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff there that I've done that just many people have never watched them. They're not on my channel. They're on other channels. I've got them in a playlist and all that. And, they're with either Bart or Pim on a number of different subject matters that I've actually done. So go look at some of my playlists. You'll get some interesting videos that you probably, or issues, or non-native EMFs, or 5G, real actual science, not just nonsense. And the reason, about the blue light and the sort of photonic energy frequencies that are a problem of the non-native, not some of the other stuff that people talk about, which is just make-believe garbage. So you'll get the real reasons why certain things are problematic and not the false reasons, which a lot of people talk about, who are crackpots and tend to undermine the sort of good, the stuff that needs to be told out there, unfortunately. And most people, because they brush everyone with the same brush, they just ignore the rest. Unfortunately, is the reality that we live in. Yes. Pretty much. Nearly. Nearly got me. It nearly got me. Gary, how are you, mate? Hi, Harry. Brother-in-law has caught the parvo be rare in adults. Could this be a consequence of Jabba the Hutt? Yeah, I would say yes. We've even had certain people that have had accelerated, that let's say got exposed to sort of prions and from mad cow's disease type things, and actually have had accelerated degeneration. Now, it has nothing to do with they could have actually got the virus itself and had the same effect. We don't know. We can't be certain without research. And obviously, we've got no research because we've just got somebody. This guy, I think, was 58 years old. So, yeah, the biggest problem with these, this is why I'm against anything that goes inside the body and replicates in that way. And the other thing why I jump up and down about vitamin D and taurine and animal species appropriate diet to actually have the first line of defense. Now, obviously, he needs to basically ramp up. He needs to get his. This is my advice. So T-mel cell depletion, the body's memory of old viral infections disappearing. Yes, very much. Poor, because remember, you've also got senescence. A lot of people nowadays are eating crap diets. And because they're eating crap diets, one, they don't get enough taurine, their thymus shrinks. This is where you're storing your T cells. Also, taurine acts meat, in a sense, or taurine in meat acts as an antioxidant. It reduces senescence. So he'll have higher senescence in his T cells, which means they won't function properly. So how do we deal with this? You've got to go on a 3-day fast and eliminate your old stuff. And before you go on a 3-day fast, you've got to go 3 days mega dosing vitamin D and taurine. And remember the blood pressure issue. So it may take a month for that person to make the adjustments. Bad luck. If he's on a poor diet, it's his own fault in a sense. Miracles. We don't have magic pills here to do miracles. He just has to cop it sweet. But once you basically get your levels up, your vitamin D levels, you've got to get them right up to 80 nanograms per milliliter or 200 millimoles per liter. So you got to really ramp them up. There's no other way you're going to actually get the high levels of stem cell activation to basically produce new T cells. It's critical that he gets his vitamin D levels very high. That's one. Second, tell him to fucking eat a steak. Get more taurine into him, supplementation as well. And then needs to do a 3-day fast to kill off the old T cells. And once he's done that, then go hard on steaks and taurine and vitamin D for at least 2 weeks to really ramp up sort of his T cell production. So they can go inside the cells and clear out all the foreign proteins. It's the only way to do it. So strengthen your immune system and you can sort out the problem is the way to go, pretty much. So, yeah, unfortunately, yes, like a lot of people, there's been a lot of reactivation of a lot of other foreign proteins that have been suppressed because vitamin D also will take calcium and suppress viruses. So when you're low in vitamin D, you're more susceptible for, it's like, you get sores again. That's because of low vitamin D in the winter. And so these cold sores and all that, again, these other benign viruses that actually get reactivated. So by the flu. So you get the flu, they get reactivated. And since this technology is behaving like the actual thing, but slightly different, but similar, you actually, it actually seems it's even worse then the actual Jabba the Hutt seems to be even worse than the actual virus itself in sort of reactivating far more than even the virus itself does, from what I've seen. It's more related back to, so it may be the way the look, it may, this is a theory. It's a theory. Sort of a hypothesis, to be more precise. It may be the actual spike load that's actually causing it, that is actually being generated compared to the actual virus itself. And maybe that reason is but we don't really know because we don't really have any research. It's just sort of a speculation on my part, nothing else than that. But it seems to basically be very closely related. I'd say there is a bit of an issue there, because usually when you actually get the whole virus comes in, replicates through, using ribosome to produce from its mRNA information, and then it actually will go out through that receptor and go out and find another cell to infect. These sort of spikes that are being generated after the lipid nanoparticle brings it in, or a viral vector, and then it uses a ribosome to basically generate all these massive amounts of spikes, they tend to be more reactive in the cell. And it may be this overreactivity that's basically interacting with some of these older suppressed viruses and potentially reactivating them, or providing some material for them to sort of, we don't really know. It's really complicated stuff, and we haven't really looked into it. We don't have any research whatsoever. It's just more anecdotes from things we're seeing, and some epidemiological studies which tend to show, more of these reactivations where you don't see it with the actual virus itself. So, don't know. We can speculate, but it's not science to speculate. But seems to be a probability, slightly higher, but I can't tell you exactly what's driving it precisely. But there seems to be a strong correlation between spike production, and it seems that the more spike the C19 Jabba the Hutt thing generates, the worse. So we see less of it with Astra. We see slightly more because it actually the Pfizer one, that actually generates slightly more, and the modern one even generates even more. And currently in Australia, the modern one, that one, that actually is, I can't remember, 3 times more or more. I can't remember how many times it generates more of these spikes. So it actually it's probably the worst out of the 3. So in that regard. So yeah, so basically, because I think they're very low on the first 2, they're using this one now primarily, and that actually generates far more spikes in terms of production in the cell. So it actually is the worst out of the 3 in that regard. And obviously, most people have very poor immune systems, immune function, and poor T lymphocytes, because the T lymphocytes will go into the cells. And when you have a high carbohydrate diet, you actually cause more senescence. That means you damage these T cells, these T lymphocytes. And the more damaged these cells are and the more senescent they don't function as well to clear out. So you need healthy T lymphocytes to go inside the cell and clear it out, because your antibodies aren't going to do it. They just sit in the bloodstream looking for foreign proteins. So yeah, our first line of defense is T lymphocytes. And the 2 most important nutrients that are required for these T lymphocyte protectors is basically taurine, a steak, and the sun, vitamin D. And unfortunately, most people are very deficient in both. Anyway, yes, you got to go. I understand. Pretty much. Pretty much. I'm not saying they're evil people. They're just basically brainwashed and misguided. Obviously, there are people that are benefiting from this. That's a different thing. But the majority of people out there are just, pretty much just going with the flow. In Ontario, finally admitted after 2 years that they did not distinguish the difference between the hospital with cake and due to cake overinflated lies. Yeah. There's been a lot of shenanigans throughout this whole situation. Too many. And it's understandable why people are friggin' pissed off and, why they are critical and say, well, you guys have just tricked us. Anyway, is what they say. It's nearly 2:00. Can you believe that? In Hobart, that is. Better finish this. Richard, you're a late comer. What have you been doing? Made it home in time for the end. So you gave the sheep a bit of a miss. Oh, we've been talking about them, all day long. Not the pre-loved stuff that you deal with, but working mate. Fair enough. Yeah, look, I'm still on holidays. Yes, I know what you mean. Yes. I did. I think a lot of us had a few hypoglycemic shocks. Where's the cookie jar? All the lollies. Yes. Okay, fair enough. Sorry if I didn't take it, as you saw, I didn't basically get narky about it. I just say, really? Maybe I need to explain this. Yes. You got to make it a bit easier for me to understand. I'm an old fella, 55. What do you expect? Have you heard they say 2 hours ago that keeping taurine at youthful levels preserves mitochondrial density in old age? It does. It does. It definitely does. It definitely bloody does. Very important for beta amyloid, very important for antioxidant purposes, very important for regulating, your gut system. It's probably another reason why older people have difficulty absorbing nutrients in older age again. Not enough taurine in the diet to basically make sure the stomach is properly regulated and functioning. All these sort of things. It's just one after the other. I mean, I could write a book that thick about taurine. There's just too much to say. And that's just covering one part of, let alone even methionine, a book that thick, leucine, a book that thick. All these foods have been demonized, or compounds within the animal foods. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely... Nah, not really. No, there's no research to show that at all. So, nope. And we don't even know the upper limit of menaquinone 4. The Japanese have used mega doses, like 45, milligrams 3 times a day. And I mean, that's really high. That's really high levels. Saw no toxicity. Have seen the body just sucks it all up like a sponge. It's ridiculous. That's why it doesn't stay in circulation very long. So, yeah, very interesting. Anyway, damn, I was hoping to get close to the bottom. I'm just going to really go quickly through to see whether there's any real juicy stuff that I haven't covered. And then I'm going to call it quits in that regard, because I have to be somewhere else. And it's getting a bit on the late side. Plus, I need to make a couple of phone calls as well. And then drop in and sign some documents. I've done a whole lot of videos. Go and take a look at them. I've done a whole lot of, you type in Poofa and Harry Serpanos, and you will see a whole lot of videos that I've actually made on that subject. And it does not cause any of this sort of stuff that people make out that it does or not or whatever. Absolutely. So if things are properly regulated, you don't have to worry about it. Due to political, yep. Yeah, look. Yeah, I've made a few adjustments on my security settings on mine as well to avoid certain people and certain things. Yeah, I know what you mean. It is becoming a bit, yeah. Yes, because those things are species appropriate and normal, like, So why would they be talking about these things? No, they want to talk about garbage, medicines, and other crappy stuff. Yeah, it's still there, boys. It's still there. So if you want to get and have it, I haven't got rid of it. I haven't deleted it, so it's still there. It's only if I'm doing something, you'll get kicked off, and you'll know that Harry's just recording. So, in that, thanks, mate. You're welcome. As in higher doses, nobody's getting 45. Nah, definitely not. No, they're not. Yeah. But this was to decalcify. So people that had high calcium levels, then they used it to decalcify. But I've done a video on that, and I always say I don't want people decalcifying unless they've got, up to 5 milligrams is fine, like the calcium one, and the orthomolecular one, which is much higher. I only get people on that at a later stage when they've actually gone through, they're in a low inflammatory state, they've calcified, they've stabilized. People need to stop fearing calcification of arteries. That is a normal process. Soft plaque is not. Constant soft plaque, build up of soft plaque is basically your Lp(a) trying to stitch it all together and hold it all together as you're inflaming that tissue. Once you bring the inflammation down, then the body calcifies it, stabilizes it, and when it's stabilized, then the body will start clearing it out. And that's when you can use high doses of minoquinone, when there's, you go and get yourself tested and you've got super high calcium, then you get onto high dose of minoquinone to clear it all out. That's how it's supposed to work. The body knows best how it uses these protective. Normally, you wouldn't be inflaming yourself like that. There'd be small injuries. Lp(a) will come in, stitch it all up. Uric acid will go around to lower the inflammation as an antioxidant and stuff like that. Will stabilize by provide electron doning to that tissue. It'll stabilize it. then calcium will come in and drive calcium in it to patch it all up. And then that little patch up job will eventually basically, then the lipids will be removed. The body will start removing those, and it'll actually become just a very thick, calcified sort of plaque. And at that stage, it'll heal behind. And then when it heals behind, then the body will slowly remove that calcification until there's none there. And then the glycocalyx will regrow on that healthy endothelium. That's what it's supposed to do over time. And that was normal when you had very little injury. Now we're actually creating these massive injuries over a number of years, and it takes longer to clear out. And also you have to be very careful to make sure it's very stable before you do the clean out. So you have to be at least a year in a low inflamed state with stable plaque, and then clear it out. That's probably the only benefit statins have got, even though they are contraindicated and do damage long term to your health, to your mitochondria and everything else. As a short term, what they do is they have a slightly anti-inflammatory effect, which is just minor. But the biggest thing that they actually do is they calcify. They cause massive calcification. That's the benefit. They actually stabilize plaque. But you don't have to take a statin to do that. You can just basically be in a low carbohydrate state on a carnivore diet for a long period of time, and that will do the same thing. It will calcify more. People get scared when they see their calcification levels go up, but it's actually a good thing. It means there's a less unstable, plaquing. There is nothing worse than having basically unstable angina. That can erupt. That will kill you and create these massive plaque streaks of fat. It's the last thing you want. You want stabilized plaque. Do not fear calcification. If you've got an endothelial damage, you want to stabilize that. So very important. And then the body will clear it out, and you can use menaquinone 4 to clear it out a bit faster in that regard. Yep. You're welcome, mate. Look, you don't get it from the food. Get it from the food, mate. Just get it from the food. There are the only stuff you don't need. The body will actually make all the, that's why you've got the essential amino acids to be able to have all these enzymes building all that sort of stuff. So, it's more things that the body down regulates over time because it just doesn't have the time to do that. That's the other stuff where far more important, like taurine as supplementation. Yep, it does long term. It definitely does. Carnivore diet does better, but all low carbohydrate diets lower inflammation, allow the calcification to stabilize. So even if it becomes more calcified, you've got less lipids being removed out of that, and it stabilizes. And the more stable it is, then you go and test yourself and make sure that it's stable, that there's no soft plaque inside it. So you have to scan yourself to make sure that it's very stable. There's no soft plaque. And as long as there's no soft plaque, that's why I'm not a big subscriber of CAC. CAC will tell you two things, whether you've got plaquing or don't have plaquing. Because if you've got zero CAC, it means you've got no plaquing. Because even small amount of plaquing will actually create little calcium deposits. But it will be, if you look at that video. But people have got zero plaquing, zero CAC, basically means they've got no plaquing. So all it is an indicator, nothing else. Somebody who may have low plaquing, they may have come off a sad diet and still have low calcium. They're actually at more risk than the guy who's actually got far more calcification and has stabilized that angina. It can't erupt. When you've got a lot of calcification, calcium, it's stable. There's no liquidy stuff. There's no that stuff that can actually erupt. It's been removed. That's the important stuff about calcification. I think people are misunderstanding the CAC score stuff, and it's probably one area that I disagree. Probably not. Probably the word disagree isn't the. I agree with Ivor that it's a good way of actually finding out whether you've got the condition, but I don't think he has a solution how to get rid of it. He says do a low carb diet and it'll do it. Yes, it will over time, slowly, but there are better ways, faster to do it with high doses of metoquinone 4, which were used both in Dutch and Japanese studies. So we know we can remove it, but we need first to make sure that it is stable. Once it's stable, then we go and get tested, find out exactly that it's that it is actually stable and all that, and then we remove it. We just have to speed it up because we've built more compared to if we were on a species appropriate, we'd have small injuries. It would be very little, if any. And then, like you cut yourself, if you keep on scratching yourself, as I say, it'll just keep on creating new inflammation and new basically LPLA coming there to stitch it all up and building up. But it'll be soft and puffy and easy. If you press on it, it'll break and puffiness and all that. But then it's sort of calcium comes in and collagen starts binding to it and pulling it together and actually hardens. It initially hardens and then it clears away. That's what an injury is supposed to do. It's the same process that's happening in the arteries, exactly the same process. It just takes longer because we've done more damage over a longer period of time. Anyway, you're welcome. Yep. And don't know. It's not depletion. It's basically stored PUFA needs to be stabilized. It's not the PUFA is not the problem. It's a stabilization issue and stuff like that. But it's just going into some of the nuances and all that. Thanks for being here, guys. I'm going to rack off. I've got things to do, and I will see you lovely people next week. See yous.